Hey, how's it going, guys? We are back with a yet another movie review this time. I haven't done one of these in a while. It's more recently been movie reactions, thanks to simultaneous like home and theater releases. First movie review in a while. Oh, actually, no, I did one for Shang-Chi. I actually forgot. I did one for Shang-Chi because that one was a theater exclusive too. I did one for that a while back. That was a lot closer, and then I think after that. Um, Eternal. I didn't do one for Eternals. I wanted to do one, but then I didn't get around to it. And then the Disney Plus stuff. As of the time, I think the as of now, as of recording this now, not only has Eternals been released on Disney Plus, but I've also actually done my rewatch and everything. So that just needs to be edited down and uploaded and everything. So I think that should be up around the same time as this. I'm gonna try and try and get it up around the same time as this. So that should be coming up soon too. But yeah, Shang-Chi I think was the last movie review I did, and that one came after like a long absence of actual movie reviews instead of reactions. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that one too, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I mean, with this one is even bigger. This one is even bigger, as you can tell by the title. This one is the fully spoiler talk review for Marvel Studios' Spider-Man: No Way Home. This was meant to come out a lot sooner. This was meant to come out a lot sooner, and I was also originally going to do a live stream of this because I wanted to actually talk about it live and get live thoughts from you guys and have a discussion that way. But then, no, that one I think I actually tried to do it like around the time I wanted, but then didn't really happen because I think my live stream settings and all sorts of little kind of things here and there need to be tweaked and figured out and everything, and not everything's really going the way it's meant to or the way I want to, so it's gonna be a while before I can actually do like a proper live stream. So that's still somewhere on the horizon. So yeah, I think now I just figured, what, well, now I think I just kind of I kept on putting it off until I could actually figure out how to kind of tweak my live stream settings, and then that's still kind of like an ongoing thing. So then I thought, okay, if I wait until I can do a live stream, then this review's never gonna come out, so I might as well do what I can and just do it as like a pre-recorded and edited kind of thing, which is just as fine. It's just as fine. So hopefully this goes well too. But yeah, I think now at this point now, I think most, if not all, people should have seen it because I think the movie came out like mid-December. The day it came out the day after my birthday, but then I was actually waiting for a friend to be available to go see it too because we planned on going to see it together, and then they weren't available until like the kind of following week upon the movie's release. So saw it Christmas week, so that was great. That was really great. So still managed to see it pretty much on time. And I think I actually didn't fully go off of social media like I think like a few days before I actually saw it, which was actually really risky. It was really risky, but I think I was lucky enough to not really run into anything too spoilery and also spoilery at all. I had already muted everything beforehand, like months prior, but then I was still kind of just going on social media even directly after the movie's release, which was a risky thing again. So I was lucky enough to not catch anything and to actually be able to see and experience everything firsthand on the big screen. And oh my god, it was an experience. It was an experience. I think even today, I still vividly. I think I've had like two viewings now. So I think I to this day I still vividly remember just how good that first viewing actually was, and how mind blowing it was as a movie. So yeah, again, like at this point, I think most, if not all, people should have seen it. Again, goes without saying, if you haven't seen it, then watch this video until leave this video to the side until you've actually seen it. Because I am going to be delving into spoilers as deeply as I can. I've just got like a full page of stuff kind of ready to be explored and talked about and everything. But knowing me, I'll probably still miss something else. So you know what, no one's perfect. So I'm going to do the best I can as per usual. So. Yeah, so first things out of the way, first things first out of the way, just, people just people can calm down about the more obvious and the bigger spoilers. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are indeed in this movie. And I won't lie, they were in this movie for a lot longer than I thought they'd be. They were in this for for a lot longer than I thought they'd be, and I think they came in a lot sooner than I thought they would as well. But then their introduction was still their actual return to the big screen was actually still so well written and so well kind of placed and everything. Like it actually made sense with everything that already happened, and exactly how they wanted to do it. Like Ned and MJ trying to open up like a portal and everything, and then them finding the other Peter Parkers that actually come in from their universe too. And it was so great to watch, so great. I think I think the theater I went to wasn't necessarily too lively. Like they weren't boring or like dead or anything, but I think people cheered and whooped and laughed, and I wanted to be like a lot more like energetic. But then I was like but then I would definitely be the one person like my friend being like a close second to me. Like I would be the one person just actually fangirling the crap out in the theater and everything. So yeah, but I was just sitting, just shaking and just wanting to jump up and down, but then I really didn't and stuff. So that I definitely had to contain myself to some degree, which it is what it is. Not everyone is gonna have the exact same energy. Not every theater is gonna have the exact same energy. I think if you go to opening night ones in much bigger cities and much bigger areas, then you'll probably get a bigger reception and bigger kind of reactions there too, which is great. I think seeing audience reactions to this one, I think this one, I feel like this one, in terms of audience reactions, like not only matched Endgame's one, but possibly even surpassed it. Possibly even surpassed Endgame's thing. Because I think, again, with this one, this is Endgame, but just with one character and different variations of him, and the story being like the scale that it is and everything. It's really just like that big. So. Seeing it happen there, like seeing Andrew's one coming first, and the crowd went wild, and there were gasps, and I was shocked, and then like I think my friend actually caught onto it like a lot sooner than I did, and then it wasn't I think it wasn't until like he actually came into clear view, and you saw the eyes were so different. It definitely wasn't Tom's Spidey suit and everything, and that was just so reminiscent of Andrew's one. And then like he didn't take off the mask for like 5 seconds, but then as soon as he takes off the mask, he's like, oh, it's Andrew Garfield, he's in the movie, and that definitely got some loud whoops and everything. And then they try again to try and find their Peter Parker, but then the other Peter Parker, the original, the first one comes through. Tobey Maguire comes through, but he's not in his suit. He has a suit like under his clothes as he usually does, but then he's actually wearing like his casual Peter Parker clothes over it and everything. So, but Tobey Maguire came through. Like they both aced it. They both came through with this movie after years of being off screen, and not only was it nostalgia, I think it was iconic, it was nostalgic, it was so pitch perfect too. I think, like it definitely felt like watching those two iterations of Peter Parker gracing the screens and gracing like the story all over again, and it was just like such a great kind of blending of those two characters and everything. So that was really fun. So I mean, I'll probably kind of like, I'll probably I'll get to talking more about them later on down the line. I think there are still other things. I mean, I wanted to go in order, but then me and my ADHD mind, I think I have no idea like if I will get through these points in order, if it's just gonna be all over the place or something. So I guess we'll see. As per usual, I guess we'll see. So. Yeah, to start off with, so I think I think one thing I actually did kind of like about this movie is the fact that it does actually start straight after Far From Home, like the opening scene. I think they did do the same thing with some of the other kind of heavier, like they did do the Marvel Studios intro with this one the same way they'd done it for the equally heavy ones, like with Infinity War they had they had darker music, and then I think with I think with Infinity War, I think maybe like one other, I think I can't remember, I think maybe one other movie like they've had it where the kind of Marvel Studios intro plays like visually it plays the same, but then there's either no music or there's different music, or it's like a kind of different kind of thing. But then with this one, to fit the tone, they have no music running over it, just like the actual newsreel thing from the Far From Home post-credit scene running, where it's announcing Mysterio's death, and then Mysterio actually kind of outs Peter as Spider-Man and everything. So we had that one running in sync, and then by the time it actually cut back to the movie, it was actually following up from that same scene where he's like, "Oh, what the fuck," and everything. So that was good. I think I actually really like that. I think it's if you I think it's also like it enables you, like if you want to be able to actually watch both of them back to back, you absolutely can. And especially if you do it that way too, I think tonally and thematically, it's just the darkest kind of hours of Peter's life. Like for one thing, in one movie, he's just tricked and manipulated by Jake Gyllenhaal, which I think people have been taking absolute liberty of that kind of parallel to, like, Jake Gyllenhaal is the one actually ruining, Peter Parker and Taylor Swift's life and everything. So I actually did kind of find some kind of value in those memes too. So that was fun. But yeah, no, like the way they did this, I think if you did want to watch it back to back, it would just be easily the craziest kind of two kind of movies like to watch back to back, and the craziest two rides of Peter's life, like him going from trusting and being betrayed by Mysterio to then having an entire life flipped upside down in the worst way by Mysterio too. So I think if you watch it back to back, that kind of like definitely kind of like I mean, you can do it. I think maybe if it works for you, would be like a that would be like a very much like up to you to decide if it works for you. If you prefer to watch it, apart or something, or if you'd actually want to watch it back to back and stuff, then it'll be up to you. But I think it's like an interesting enough kind of like a way to display that kind of timeline where he goes from dealing with the stuff from the blip, and I think especially with Far From Home being so Tony centric too, with I think with No Way Home, I think there's no Tony whatsoever. I think despite how closely, I mean, I mean to begin with, it carries off closely from Far From Home, but then I think the rest of the movie, the rest of the movie, I think is actually separated across like the summer and then Halloween, and I think the ending, with it snowing and with it being like like winter and everything, I think it is actually coming up to Christmas. I think No Way Home as a movie spans from summer, I think like the end of summer vacation all the way to Christmas. It actually spans like a good few kind of months and everything. So that's definitely interesting. That is definitely interesting. And I think looking back, right, I think I think overall, I think there's actually very little. I think now I'd say that there's honestly very little I did not like about this movie. I think it's easily Tom's best work as Spider-Man and as Peter Parker, and it's easily the best Spider-Man movie he's done in this trilogy. And I say this trilogy because now it's been confirmed that Sony and Marvel are going to be working together on a new trilogy with Tom Holland as Spider-Man, like a new live action trilogy with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think they've also got like an animated early years Spider-Man series in the making too, which is actually going to be set in the MCU, and it's going to be exploring Peter's kind of earlier life. So I think that one, I don't know if that's gonna have like voice acting, or if it's just gonna be like some kind of like some like purely visual animation, or what's gonna happen. But I think that one's meant to be like Spider-Man the early years and everything. So I think maybe that one kind of focuses on Uncle Ben, or maybe like his origins as Peter, because I think that's the one thing that this trilogy didn't really give us. I think with good enough reason too. We've already had two origin stories as Spider-Man, and everyone knows exactly kind of like near enough how it happens, and it's been the same near enough every time too. Like Uncle Ben gets shot in a mugging, and then he and then that kind of inspires Peter to go out and do his thing and stuff, and it teaches him great power and great responsibility, and then they use that so beautifully in this one too. So with this one, I think this one, I think they definitely utilized May a lot more. They definitely utilized May a lot more in this too, and I think overall, I think I actually might kind of enjoy Homecoming and No Way Home May over. I felt like she just really wasn't used that much in Far From Home. I think in Far From Home, I feel like they really only brought her in to try and throw in Happy in the mix too, like her and Happy's kind of little summer fling thing. Like they mostly just brought her in. She had like an introduction with the feasting that was carried on into this one too. But I think besides from that, I think Far From Home, I feel like it didn't really have enough May, or didn't really have like incorporate May in like a really kind of independent, or in like a really kind of like in a way that didn't really involve Happy. So I think that kind of bothered me about that one. But then with No Way Home, she's in it a lot more as May Parker, as Peter's aunt, as his guardian, and as the one trying to inspire some hope in him, which she does. So it fucking sucks what happens to her in this movie. Not forgiving Marvel for that. Definitely nowhere near. I'm nowhere near forgiving Marvel for that. I think emotionally, that kind of that has left me as emotionally like ridden as seeing Gwen die in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. So definitely not feeling good stuff about that. Definitely not. So one thing that definitely got me, I think to this day, like even now, I'm still kind of like bothered by it, is just like is the public reaction to not only Peter being Spider-Man, but then the Mysterio stuff. Like I think it even got to me in the Far From Home post-credit scene when they first kind of played it out that way. Like they brought back Jameson with his podcast and everything, but then even in that one, he was like Mysterio, like the mighty interdimensional warrior, and quite possibly even the greatest superhero of all time. And it's like, where are you getting this description from? Like, he was around for like a week, and then all this stuff happened. Like, he wasn't even around for that long. We've had the Avengers for longer, and their literal kind of tagline thing is Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And they had like a whole kind of sect of time dedicated to hating on the Avengers and doing the whole Sokovia Accords thing, but then Mysterio comes along and then all of a sudden he's the greatest superhero. Like, that kind of stuff with Mysterio, like, didn't really kind of add up for me either. Like, I think, and even Mysterio's video, I think, even if it was fueled by Mysterio's video where he painted Spidey as the villain and said that, oh, Spider-Man said, oh, he was going to be the next Iron Man and no one else and everything, like, that was obvious manipulation for the audience to kind of decipher. But then even then, it's like, nothing Mysterio has done has really warranted him to be, even from the public side, nothing he's done has really warranted him being called the greatest warrior, the greatest hero, the greatest superhero of all time. Like he's not been around for nearly as long, and all he's really done is fight off pseudo elementals. Like it's really all he's done. Like the Avengers have fought countless battles, and they even brought back half the universe, and then they got like a memorial, like they got a mini memorial at the beginning of Far From Home, and then the ending is apparently how Mysterio is the greatest and everything, all that kind of stuff. And even Spider-Man fought with the Avengers. Spider-Man fought with the Avengers, and now all of a sudden people think he's just turned around and killed Mysterio for no good reason. So I don't know, the Mysterio stuff, I think, I feel like it could have been, they pulled off the manipulation stuff from Mysterio's end really well, but then I feel like for no good reason they just kind of dumbed down the public and made it so that the public would automatically support Mysterio no matter what, despite the fact that Spider-Man has been around for longer, and he fought with the Avengers, and he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of New York, but then all of a sudden they're turning his back on him. And I think, to be fair, I think the public turning their backs on Spider-Man is not like an uncommon thing. It's like it's like a pretty prevalent kind of theme throughout Spider-Man stories where he's a vigilante and then not everyone trusts him, not everyone appreciates him. They just kind of think he's a menace. And I think it's often fueled by Jameson's kind of slander of Spider-Man too, like him constantly calling him a menace and like a master vigilante and a criminal and all that kind of stuff. So I think on that end it makes sense. But then if they just did it based on vigilantism and based on the Sokovia Accord stuff, then that would then make sense. But then it's like like they're not just slandering him; they're deliberately saying that Mysterio is better than him and that he killed Mysterio and that he's a murderer and that Mysterio is right. And then it's like people literally going like hashtag Mysterio forever or hashtag Mysterio is right or whatever. Like that kind of stuff just didn't really make sense to me. Like you knew him for you barely knew him and you knew him for a week and he was around for a week and then that's it. So I don't know, that kind of stuff got to me, and I was like, that kind of stuff just kind of didn't really kind of bode well with me. So I think, I don't know, maybe if someone's actually got a better explanation as to like exactly how that works or what that means or something, but for me, it didn't really kind of pan out too well. So I just kind of like had like an issue with that the entire time, and to this day, I still had like even now, I still can't really kind of see past all of that entirely. So yeah. Oh god, and then the very first cameo we got, that absolutely blew the minds and the socks off of me and my friend when we first saw this. Like this one, and I think afterwards, I actually, obviously after the movie, I had no hesitation and no reluctance in going online and seeing everyone's thoughts and what happened. And then I think I had found out before the movie that two things, like I think a couple of things or like a few things had been leaked, like some images or some footage or something had been leaked. I strayed well away from those and made sure I didn't actually see any of those popping up on my timeline, which again, I was lucky enough to actually not see any of those. And I'm very glad I didn't, because I think if I actually went in seeing those leaks, my experience would be entirely different. My experience would undoubtedly be entirely different. One of those leaks was in fact Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox Matt Murdock, from Daredevil, having visited Peter as his lawyer. So Matt Murdock, we got Matt Murdock in the MCU. We have Charlie Cox Matt Murdock in the MCU, and I think even before the movie's release, I think there was actually a video, like a press interview snippet thing that was released of Kevin Feige saying like Charlie Cox is going to be the MCU's Daredevil. Like, he didn't say when he would show up, he didn't say how he would show up, he just said, when you see Daredevil in the MCU, whenever you see Daredevil in like the newest MCU product, like whenever you see him, he will be played by Charlie Cox. Charlie Cox from Netflix's Daredevil is the official MCU's kind of Daredevil. He is the one playing him, so just kind of you can rest safely knowing that he will be playing Matt Murdock. Whenever you see him, he'll be playing Daredevil. So it was happily confirmed in this movie. I think the way they introduced him too, the camera zooms out of Peter's face, and then the cane comes in. The cane just stomps on the ground, and you see that, and it's like, wait, there's a cane. It's like, oh shit, he needs a lawyer. Oh shit, Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock. So yeah, I think this was also something that people really theorized from the beginning too. I think people theorized it would either be Matt Murdock, because that would be the coolest cameo they could have, but then if they wanted to especially deal with a superhero case and with Peter Parker being Spider-Man, then also Jennifer Walters, who has her own series coming up on Disney Plus soon enough. Her being a lawyer that also specializes in like that actually specializes in superhero cases too. I think she would also be like an equally good candidate for a cameo that would actually help set her up and set her story up too. But then with Matt Murdock, I think that one too, it worked, and I think it worked, and it was also like a great, like it had great nostalgic value to it too. We haven't seen Charlie Cox or Daredevil on screen for years. Like his series was cancelled by Netflix, so his return to the screen, like Daredevil's return to the screen, has always kind of been up in the air and with question marks and everything, like in how when it could happen and everything. So, and I think even to this day, people are petitioning to have Daredevil season 4 picked up by the MCU, to actually have it kind of return to the MCU on Disney Plus, to actually have season 4 kind of like carried on, and to have the other kind of series actually carried over to the Disney Plus kind of service as well. So I'm all for it. Um, but yeah, Matt Murdock came in. He was the lawyer. He was the official lawyer. I don't think he was the lawyer, and he also got all the like any and all charges that Peter had as part of his kind of vigilante kind of career and everything. Like Matt got all those charges dropped. He was active lawyer. He got all the charges dropped. He couldn't necessarily do the same for Happy. But he got all the charges against Peter dropped, and then he advised him that there's still the court of public opinion, which he advised him that the initial criminal charges were dropped, but then there would also be the court of public opinion, which would undoubtedly make his life a lot harder to deal with and everything. So there was, I think that one would be about whether or not the public. I think that one would be about whether or not the public actually thinks that Spider-Man is a force for good and that he's needed and he's a hero that they've had just like the Avengers before him or something. So that was like a whole thing that happened. So he came back to seeing his face in IMAX on the big screen with those glasses and the cane and his voice, and just, oh god, seeing Matt Murdock, just seeing Charlie Cox reprising Matt Murdock on the big screen, no less, in a movie, no less. That was something else. So see, I think after that, I did actually kind of, I did find out. I didn't go looking for the leaks, but then I actually did find out about the leaks. Because then, after it was confirmed in the movie, then people were like, oh yeah, so these leaks were actually real. These leaks were real. So then one of the leaks was actually a picture of Matt in the kind of Parker residence with Happy and May and Peter, kind of in his suit, being all lawyery and everything. So that kind of confirmed that they're going to consult a lawyer, and then Matt Murdock being one of the most iconic superhero lawyers, he's going to be the one to try and do that. And he also knows that kind of thing too, like actually living a double life, like lawyer by day, vigilante by night. So he knows the whole shebang and everything. So that was cool. That was really cool. So we had Daredevil. We had Matt Murdock meeting Peter Parker. So one day, hopefully in the next trilogy, we'll have Spider-Man and Daredevil. So hopefully, and he even had that. He even had that really good lawyer moment. Like he actually he told Happy that he'd been a really good lawyer, and then like the brick came flying through the window, and he used his senses to actually catch it in midair, and then Peter knowing he's blind, but then actually sensing a brick coming through and catching it without even looking, and be like, how the hell did you do that? And he's like, I'm just that good of a lawyer. My other lawyer tingles are just that high up, and they're really, flared up and everything. So he's just that good of a lawyer. So even had a little bit of a demonstration to confirm this is indeed our Daredevil dude. He has those senses. He has those heightened senses and environmental awareness and everything, so he can catch that brick without breaking a sweat. So that was cool. Charlie Cox in the MCU. Daredevil officially in the MCU. So I think this is just one step closer to actually reprising everything we can and stuff, so that would be really cool. That would be really, really cool. And of course, as the trailer showed, Peter's new mentor in this one. I think they somewhat did pass it off as a mentor-mentee ship, and I think honestly, they might have even done like a better mentor-mentee ship thing with maybe like a slightly better. I don't know. I mean, I actually don't know about that. I mean, I don't know. Or maybe like a slightly better, if not equally good, mentor-mentee kind of thing with Peter and Strange than they did with Peter and Tony. Like with this one, it was, I personally didn't have a problem with how they did Peter and Tony in Homecoming. Like I didn't really see it as as the biggest kind of deal. I think people did talk about how much it kind of strayed away from exactly who Peter was originally, even in the comics. But then of course, first thing you gotta know about getting into the MCU, it's not exactly like the comics. Like they take a lot of inspiration, but then they also take like a lot of creative liberty, and they they take their own corners, they take their own paths, and they kind of do their own story. Um, in that sense, and even then, the MCU is its own kind of variant universe within the Marvel Comics canon as well. Like it's like Earth 199999, etc. and stuff. So I think even then, it's like I think then for me the question would be like like exactly how much of the MCU is canon within the Marvel Comics universe, even in that universe. Like exactly like how much of those kind of faces and stories and choices are actually accurate too. So I think with this one, I think with Homecoming, I think they kind of with I think after seeing No Way Home, I feel like I think I actually have after seeing No Way Home, I think I definitely have like a greater appreciation for the story that for the stories that they did in Homecoming and Far From Home, because I think before No Way Home, I think it's easier to see it as like stories that they're trying to do with Homecoming and From Home, but then after seeing No Way Home, it's like you definitely see like the direction they took was at least like I think for the most part like mostly intentional at the very least, even if like even if people disagree with them, it's like the decisions that they took for Homecoming and Far From Home were definitely kind of intentional in that degree, or at least like in that manner, to the degree that it's what helps No Way Home excel so much more, like knowing exactly how they made Peter out to be in the first two movies. So I think with No Way Home, like I feel like No Way Home just kind of wouldn't really work as much if Far From Home and Homecoming weren't what they were. Even if you disagree with them, even if you don't really like just like the way, even if you don't like or kind of relate to the way that Peter is portrayed in those movies ever, I feel like in that regard, like like No Way Home probably wouldn't work as well, because I think No Way Home is where it really pushes Peter to his limits, and it really kind of it really molds him into the Spider-Man that people are supposed to recognize and people that are supposed to love and all that kind of stuff. So I think in addition to that, I think like the way that the Peter and Tony stuff is done at Homecoming, I think is now is I feel like is now slightly more valid, but then it also I think it also helps kind of like kind of polish out like a lot of the Peter and kind of Strange stuff. And I think also because I think Peter and Strange are definitely not as close as Peter and Tony were. I think with Peter and Tony, I think they were definitely deliberately given like a bit of a closer relationship for the sake of the end game stuff happening as well. But I think with Peter and Strange, I think Peter and Strange have like that kind of nicer, friendlier mix of mentor mentee and also colleagues, because I think he even actually did he like just like in the trailer, he actually does mention like how they actually both work together to save half the universe and to actually bring them back and everything. So because that like I think they were both kind of pretty much like honorary Avengers in that battle. And I think even like then like in the kind of time frame of No Way Home 2, I think they are both just kind of like co-worker superheroes and everything. So I think it's just like both of them kind of helping and working together and everything. So that kind of stuff's great. But we see that Peter does go to Strange, I think, because I think the issue that him and Ned and MJ run into is that because of the controversy surrounding Peter as Spider-Man and that whole kind of vigilantism thing, MIT doesn't know that they can accept them and actually bring that controversy to their front door as well. So then because of that, all their applications are rejected. So then Peter goes to Strange to see if he can actually do anything that would actually make it so that Mysterio like actually never kind of revealed who he was and actually ruined his life and ruined the lives of everyone around him too. So I think initially he actually I think initially he like I think Peter doesn't really know if he can make them forget. I think because I think I can't remember. I think I can't remember exactly, but I think in the trailer he might have asked him to make people forget. Or I think he might have asked him to. I think even in the trailer, I think in the trailer he asked him make it so that he never did. So he never specified how. He didn't say make a spell so that everyone forgets or make a spell that travels back. And I think initially he kind of implies that maybe he can do it with the time stone. Maybe actually go back in time and actually do that. But then I think Strange kind of clarifies that that the stones are gone. Like not only is the present day one reduced to atoms, but then even the ones that they used to actually send everyone back were returned to their appropriate place in time, so that the timeline wouldn't crumble and everything. So because that thing's gone, and then Peter says, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, forget about it." And then that's when a new light bulb goes off in Strange's head, and Strange's head, and then that's when he gets the idea to, "Oh yeah, we can make everyone forget that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are the same people." So then, I think yeah. So then. Then people would still remember that Peter Parker exists, which Yeah, so then that happens, but then no, but then he's like, actually separating those two identities once again, so that people don't know that he's actually the same person, and that kind of like alleviates like a lot more stress off of him. And I think I think one of the changes I actually enjoyed more was that in the trailer in the trailer they show Wong warning Strange against doing that spell. They actually show Wong being like, Strange, don't cast that spell, it's too dangerous, and then Wong goes behind his back, and then Strange goes behind Wong's back and does it anyway. But then in the movie, he's like, Wong is literally just like, you know what? Do whatever you want, just keep me out of this. He's already packed his bags, he's going on vacation, and fun fact, Wong is now the Sorcerer Supreme too. Like in the 5 years that Strange was blipped away for, they needed like a new Sorcerer Supreme, and then Wong was the only one who actually was around, and he survived and everything. So then he stepped up to the mantle, and then he is now the new Wong is now the new Sorcerer Supreme. So he literally just kind of claimed that title in Strange's absence and everything. So now he's been promoted and everything. So that was cool. That was a fun little tidbit to find out. So there was that. So now I think now Strange must either reclaim the title, or like he must work his way up again, because it's what he had to do in the first one anyway. So God knows how that's gonna go. I think I mean, if he can't do it in time for Multiverse of Madness, then it's probably gonna be it's just gonna be Doctor Strange versus all these threats, and not the Sorcerer Supreme. Well, I mean, Wong will still be with him, so it'll still be the Sorcerer Supreme. But still, that was a fun little tidbit to find out that on like a technicality, he even said like on a technicality, because Strange was blipped for 5 years. Wong saw an opportunity and he took it, and and they needed like a new Sorcerer Supreme. So yeah, that was fun. And so yeah, then as we saw in the trailer too, he does try the spell, and it does go pretty much exactly how exactly as how chaotically the trailer displayed it too. Like initially it's like, oh, the whole world is about to get that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Then it's like, and then Peter keeps coming up with all new people that he needs to remember is Spider-Man too. I think he like first it's like Ned is his best friend, MJ's his girlfriend, she needs to know, and then Aunt May needs to know. But then he also kind of like he actually outwardly states that when she first found out, it was really messy and he can't go through that again. But then I think for that, I think thinking back to that, I feel like I actually would have been okay. I would have, I think it didn't take anything away from not seeing it, but then I actually would have liked to see just how messy it might have been. Like actually, like, because I think after that Homecoming ending, I think that was easily the biggest kind of that was the biggest twist too. Like, oh, for all of a sudden Aunt May finds out that Peter's actually Spider-Man and everything. I think especially like in that movie too, and I think that kind of progression for Aunt May, I think is like that's cool too. Like, I think it's hold on. So like after she finds out in Homecoming, the big question is, okay, what's she gonna do? How's she gonna react? What's that whole reveal and relationship developing gonna be like? And then jump into Far From Home, because then after that he's in Infinity, like after that he's straight in Infinity War and everything. So that happens. But then after that, like he's in Far From Home. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Aunt May not only knows, but she's okay with it, and she's using him to sponsor and promote Feast and everything, and she's actually using his image to promote Feast and bring some awareness and have Spider-Man supporting Feast and supporting like an important cause and everything. So then that's the answer to that. Oh, she knows and she's happy about it, but then we never actually really see the mess or how messy it was. And I think it's something we never got with the other two Spider-Man either. Like I think like Maguire's Aunt May never found out that he was Spider-Man. Aunt May in Garfield's duology never found out. Like I think in the movies we have never had an Aunt May find out that her nephew is actually Spider-Man and everything. And then this is the first time we've had it. And then it's like we don't really get to see the straight after that kind of reaction and everything. And especially in Homecoming, he actually explicitly states that he does reference Uncle Ben's death in like a really indirect way. But then he also just kind of generally states that after everything that's happened, she's gonna freak out, and it's not gonna go, like, whether or not it ends well, only time will tell. But then it's not gonna go well. She's gonna freak out. It's gonna bring like a lot of tension, anxiety between the two of them. But then jump into Far From Home, that kind of stuff. They've worked through it, and they've actually talked about everything. And then now she's actually using it and everything. So now, and even in Far From Home, she's actively sending him with his suit too. She's actually actively sending him to Europe with his suit. He deliberately tries not to pack it. Because he doesn't want to be Spider-Man in Europe. He just wants to be Peter Parker. But then May's like, nope, you gotta be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man even in Europe. So she sends it with him. And I think even that stuff is referenced in No Way Home too. Like the FBI, the FBI, or I think it might be the FBI. I think the law enforcement dude actually, being like, oh, so like, you like he was entrusted to you in your care as his parent, guardian, and essentially as his mother, and yet you not only knew about this and you found out about this, but then you actually encouraged it. You sent him off to on a school trip with a suit. You did all this stuff. You actually encouraged him in his vigilantism. So that's essentially with his age as well. That's essentially child endangerment, and actually, you know even if he does have the ability to deal with these kinds of threats and situations that are still effectively child endangerment, and then that could be like a really nasty kind of reputation and kind of rap for her too. So they did kind of reference like her kind of suffering consequences of actually indulging in this kind of crusade of his. So that was fun to see. So that was cool. So then he's like, Aunt May has to remember, Ned has to remember, MJ has to remember, and then I think at the very end he mentions Happy too, like, oh, Happy is the one remaining connection that Peter has to the Starks, and with Pepper and Morgan out there too, like, it's the one connection he has. So I think that one is the final one. I think where strangers can't really keep all these loops and all these different kind of, all these different kind of exceptions together, and then all of a sudden the spell blinds out of control and the multiverse and. So yeah, that's when it all goes tits up. So yeah. So yeah, the new spell is the one that spawns in the multiverse, and then that kind of brings everyone in. So I think it starts off obviously with the villains. I think the villains, as we said, I think the trailers had no issues with promoting the villains, because I think the villains were understandably easier to promote, and understandably kind of easier to actually get some hype actually built up around it. Because then, of course, if you again, even if you do have Toby and Andrew in the movie, you want to save them for the movie itself and not blow even like a single second away all on the trailer. So yeah, so the villains kind of came through. So we had Alfred Molina returning as the almighty Dr. Octopus. We had Green Goblin. We had Willem Dafoe himself actually returning as Norman Osborn, aka Green Goblin. We had Sandman and Lizard. I think those ones I actually read, because I think I actually recognized their voices so distinctly and so accurately in the movie. I was like, they must have done some voice work at least, right? I think don't know if they actually came on set and actually just kind of like, because I think Sandman and Lizard, I think Lizard understandably, because I think he doesn't really transform back unless he runs out of serum, or I think he kind of unless it wears off or something. So I think even with that, he still manages to maintain it. So I think in the movie he is the Lizard for like the whole thing, like all of his scenes he's the Lizard. Same with Sandman too, like he never transforms back into human form. So I think that kind of got me thinking, like did they film it that way deliberately, or did they actually kind of like is there like another reason, like maybe they filmed it offset or something, and then they couldn't actually bring him in? And I think it was half true, they couldn't actually bring, I think, as badly as those actors wanted to actually be on set to film their parts, they actually couldn't because of like COVID and everything. So then they had mocap stuff going on, I think, with other actors and other kind of stunt doubles and everything. But then they actually did have, I think his name is Thomas Hayden Church, I think, the guy who plays Sandman, and then I think Rhys Ifans, I think he's the guy who plays Lizard too. I think they did have those two actors actually sending in their actual voices and having them do voice work off-site to have it kind of dubbed into the movie and everything. So I think the voice work at least got in. I think for the end shots of their transformations back into human form when they cured, they actually did have archive footage. I think I didn't recognize it as much for Sandman. I thought that might have been something that they filmed off-site in like a different kind of mocap studio or something, and then they just kind of sent it over to Marvel to actually have it added into the movie. But no, I think I recognize. I think it was angled differently in Lizard's one, but I think with Lizard's kind of, I think it was so I think I recognized Lizard's archive footage used for the transformation back into human almost immediately, because of the fact that I had actually seen the first Amazing Spider-Man movie like 3 times before actually going to watch No Way Home as part of the Spider-Man rewatch kind of thing. I'd seen the first one because I think the Garfield Spider-Man duology is just like they're just comfort movies for me. I think first one is great. The first one is actually I think I actually definitely do enjoy the first one like slightly more than the second one, but then the second one for me I love it, and I think it's also like, I think for me the second one is just overhated. I think it's not nearly as bad, and it's not nearly as bad as everyone seems to think it is. It has its problems, sure, and if you look at it from the standpoint that it was made back then where they intended to make more, then then it definitely kind of makes more sense that they actually wanted to do more, but then they actually lost out on that opportunity and everything, so then that kind of didn't really work in their favor. But then Garfield and Emma Stone, like, they definitely gave it their all. They definitely did the absolute best they could with what they were given, with what they were allowed to do and everything, and they nailed it. So I don't care what anyone says about those movies. I love them. They are my comfort movies and everything. So I loved it. But I think I recognized the lizard's kind of transformation shot back into human like almost immediately. And I thought, oh, this definitely. I think especially because it was angled differently too. I thought, oh, this definitely has to be archive footage. But then I think I couldn't really tell the same thing for the Sandman one because I think I had only watched Spider-Man 3 like once in my rewatch kind of phase. So didn't really recognize it right off the bat like that. So that was still cool knowing that was there. But then they did send in their voices, presumably recorded elsewhere, to be dubbed into the movie. And then I think the entire movie they just had like Sandman and the Lizard being in their CGI kind of, powered up kind of forms and everything. So they were in this. That was cool. And then we had Electro too. I think Electro actually started off as like a blue thing, but then Sandman and Peter actually initially worked together to try and capture him. Because then Strange actually. Like he went after meeting Octavius, Peter went back to Strange to wonder to actually figure out what the hell was going on, and Strange revealed to him that Eric, like instead of making everyone forget who Peter Parker was, or instead of making everyone forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, instead it pulled in everyone from other universe, or most people from other universes, that actually knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, which was all of his villains. So that happened. So then, I think Strange had already captured Lizard by that point, and I think did he capture anyone else? I think he captured Lizard, and I think he captured Octavius too. Maybe I think he might have captured Octavius. I think he managed to capture Doctor. I think he did. I think no, because I think he sent the portal as soon as Green Goblin showed up. I think Strange sent the portal onto the bridge to capture Peter and Octavius. That happened. So he captured them, but then he captured Lizard first. And then he actually he told Peter like, oh, everyone in other universes who knows that Peter is Spider-Man has instead been drawn into this one. So now we need to sort them out and capture them and send them home and everything. And all the villains were captured right before their deaths too. I think Octavius and Electro especially actually talked about how they actually remembered having Spider-Man like by the throne, actually being ready to kill Spider-Man, and everything like right before they themselves died, Octavius having Spider-Man by the throat with his claws and everything, and then all of a sudden he was taken into this world, and then Electro being supercharged by Spider-Man, about to die, and then he was about to turn into pure energy, but then he died and he got moved and everything, so that they were plucked out of the universes right before they died, and they were destined to go back and be killed by Spider-Man anyway, so that kind of sets up like a whole new story and like a whole new kind of thing for a whole new dilemma for Peter to process and tackle, which again is what really brings him up to the kind of ranks of being the Spider-Man and everything, and actually following that moral code and trying to do what's best for everyone and everything. So that is where that story begins, and I think the kind of different presentations of the villains, and this was really interesting too, like with them Octavius kind of like being the most kind of reluctant to work with Spider-Man, and being the one who's like mostly kind of antagonistic because of his damaged neural inhibitor, but then once Peter actually replaces that and actually fixes that, he's actually back to being Otto Octavius again. He's actually good again, he's in control, he's sane, he's stable and everything, so then he actually becomes more of like an actual positive and like cooperative kind of figure, and he's actually grateful to Peter for having helped him and everything, so then he changes from there. And I think, to be fair though, I think even in his original movie, I think that was always the display, like to begin with, he was a really smart, really kind of kind and really generous and hardworking kind of guy. He wanted to help people, he wanted to actually, he wanted to create this new renewable energy source, and he actually wanted to help people, but then the chip on his arms broke, and then his arms kind of, it became like a horror story between him and his arms, and who was in control, and him fighting to finish off this thing in the name of science, but then harming people in the process. Like it was pretty much like as it was displayed from there on. But then I think they carried it into No Home really well, in like a really kind of well kind of written kind of way. So I love that. So Octavius was with him, and then I think everyone else was kind of like somewhat neutral slash self, like the Sandman, Electro, Lizard, somewhat neutral slash self-serving. Some of them wanted power, some of them wanted to go home, and just kind of be done with all this kind of stuff. And then the one true evil, and I think the one that you can expect to be the true evil, the one true evil was in fact Norman as Green Goblin. Like Norman smashed his own mask, smashed the Green Goblin's mask, and actually let the Goblin kind of go dormant in his head for a while, until he went to feast and found May and Peter again. And then it was until they were getting ready to fix all the villains in Happy's apartment that Goblin eventually came out. I think that scene too. I think one thing I definitely loved, one thing I can't stop loving about this movie, and one of the things it did so well, the spider sense, Tom's spider sense, Tom's spidey sense in this one. I think they don't even really call it the tingle anymore. They called it that in Far From Home, and then people got pissed off for some reason. Like I think, admittedly, not the best name. Spidey sense is already there, but then again, Peter Tingle is. I think it's to me, it's just a name. It's just like it's just a like a more goofy name they came up with. For me, it doesn't really change anything. Like it's still known canonically as a Spidey sense. I think we can still call it a Spidey sense. It's not like them. It's not Marvel legally forcing us to call it a Peter Tingle or whatever. It's just them trying out something goofy for the movie. It's to me, it's harmless. To me, it's relatively harmless. But in this one, the visual representation of his Spidey sense is my god, some of the best stuff I've ever seen. Like when he senses Octavius coming in, and it's like he senses it's that perfect kind of extent of him actually sensing danger in the horizon moments before it arrives, moments before it actually shows up for anyone else. Like it's him sensing something, really like sensing some impending doom. And I think essentially, it pretty much gives you the perfect leeway to define Spidey sense as superhero anxiety. It pretty much gives you the perfect leeway because I think he is essentially like on edge and he's anxious and he's actually just he knows something is coming, but he doesn't know exactly what's coming, and he has to actually try and hone it and try and actually focus and actually try and actually wonder and figure out what's going to happen and why it's so bad and everything. To me, the Spidey sense it is and has always been just superhero anxiety for superheroes and stuff, or at least anxiety for Spider-Man. So maybe for him, because all of his senses are dialed up to 11. Maybe for him, it's just regular human anxiety dialed up to 11. So it's like for him, it's even more powerful and everything. So the display, the presentation of the Spidey sense in this one is just top notch. It's actually absolutely top notch and everything. So it's actually just really, really well done. So I think with that one, I think with this one too, I think he senses Octavius. He senses it's used like more kind of more quickly and more snappily in combat. But then I think in actual kind of in the actual scenes where he has to sense the danger coming, he actually has to like look around the room and he's analyzing all the different kind of threats and everything, and then he finally narrows it down to Goblin. Goblin has come back. Goblin is back inside Norman's head again, and Norman's actually trying to, and Goblin is trying to regain power from within the apartment and everything. So then that's when it happens, and Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin in this was a blessing. That was a blessing. Not even in disguise. Not even in disguise. It was just a blessing. It was a blessing. And I read somewhere that Willem Dafoe only agreed to come back to play Green Goblin if he got to do all of his own stunts, and he performed them. So he performed his own stunts, pretty much perfectly. I think as well as you would expect him to perform them, he performed them all. His fight scenes, his glider kind of stuff, his all the stunts that he needed to do, and stuff like he performed them all to near perfection. I say near perfection, might as well be perfection. But I think even as a character, as a personality, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin versus Tom Holland's Spider-Man, he works so well. I think he's the perfect Goblin for Maguire, and he's also the perfect Goblin for Tom Holland. I think it's like it's a testament to the writing, but then it's also a testament to just how both of them really kind of actually work well together. How still, even to this day, how dedicated Willem Dafoe is to pulling off the perfect Goblin. He's so creepy. The hotel, the actual apartment fight scene was just, my god, like when Peter's repeatedly pounding him in the face, and then Goblin just stood there laughing his freaking ass off and everything. He's so creepy and so menacing and formidable, and he's so great. He's so great, and physically as well. In terms of physicality and strength, he's definitely a match for Spider-Man. I think he's definitely a match for Spider-Man in this. I think they definitely went far and beyond, above and beyond even to actually try and to display the fact that Goblin is definitely a match physically for Spider-Man. He can punch just as hard, he can kick, he can fly, he can do jumps and all sorts of different moves and everything. So definitely a match for Spider-Man. And even personality-wise too, like his line, struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose. And him actually, even Goblin, I think Goblin even said that he deliberately went dormant to let Norman out to play for a little bit, to actually let Norman gain May and Peter's trust, to actually get them in to a vulnerable spot and everything until Goblin could come out. And then in that time he saw how May had kind of trapped Peter in her own holy moral mission, because I think initially Peter's plan is just to do what Strange said and to actually send all the villains back to their home worlds and let them die as they're meant to, and to fix the timeline that way. But then May's like, no, if you can help them, because I think Norman is the one villain who's actually shown Norman being Norman, and then him having that goblin alter ego inside of him, he's the one villain who's shown to actually have like a good side and a bad side to him. So then May's kind of idea there, which is perfectly valid, is to actually try and help Norman to see if they can actually rid him of the Goblin persona, to actually kind of rid the Goblin mentality from his head and to actually get him out, and then to make him good old Norman Osborn again. And stuff like that, which I think also kind of brings you back to like a further analysis of maybe of how Norman was even in Spider-Man 1, so I think that kind of stuff gets called into play a little bit. But then it's like I think in this one too, I think Goblin has like Goblin not only has like that same old kind of hatred for Spider-Man and that same old kind of view towards perspective on Spider-Man, where it's like, you're trying to be the hero and the normal person, but then you can't have both worlds, you can't have both sides, you can't have both lives. You got to pick and choose, and then you got to actually live with the consequences of your actions and everything and stuff. And then that's when that really comes into play with this one too. Like with Peter, I think in it, eventually with Peter, he does take May's message to heart, and then May actively tries to teach him, if you can help people, you should help them. If you have the power to help someone solve their problems and to actually help someone's situation, actually help turn them good again, you absolutely should try and actually help them and everything. So because of that, he then does make it his personal mission to actually try and fix them before sending them back. Because then, if he sends them back as they are, he sends them back as villainous as they are, and then they're just gonna go back to die and everything. But then maybe if he changes who they are and actually kind of fixes who they are, then when they go back, they can kind of go back with fresher minds and go back with like a kind of less kind of criminal intent and everything. So then maybe that can work. So then that's his new kind of heroic mission, to try and save even try and save the villains and try and help them live better lives once they go back to their respective universe and everything. So that's the whole thing. I think yeah, especially the combat between Spidey and Goblin. I think it's just, I don't even know. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's straightforward. I think the combat for Spider-Man, this one, I feel like it's definitely stepped up a match. I think the combat for this one, not only because of the fact that he's going up against Goblin, who's like a definite match for him. The same way that the Winter Soldier was a match for Captain America back in the Winter Soldier, Goblin is a match for Spidey in No Way Home too. So I think that they definitely kind of, I think John Watts definitely kind of wanted to make that known and to make that clear that he's fighting the Green Goblin, but then the Green Goblin is crazy, he's maniacal, he's brutal, he's harsh, and Spider-Man has to definitely up his game to match that. So then he definitely does. Peter, I think Tom Holland is even Tom Holland himself is a naturally kind of agile, and I don't know if he's naturally agile or something, but I think he's definitely done gymnastics and very, very, very kind of physically based kind of stuff before too. So I think he's definitely kind of used to that kind of work. He's definitely used to that kind of stunt work. So definitely takes full advantage of that in this one. His combat in this one, that hallway fight scene, just him getting jumped and then pounded through 3, 4, 5 different floors until he reaches a lobby. That was just a whole kind of thing right there. And even that final battle scene on the inside of Cap's shield after it fell from the Statue of Liberty too, that one is easily the most brutal. That one was easily the most brutal. I think that one is the first time we've seen Spider-Man holding his own physically. He's not even relying too heavily on tech there. He's just using the suit. He's using the webs. He's using the suit. That's it. He's not using any fancy drone tech. He's not using any fancy webs. He's literally just dodging, weaving, throwing punches and kicks. That one is that, even seeing it in theaters on IMAX, actually having the audio, actually, because then eventually when he himself is actually beating down on Goblin, the music dims out, you just hear the muffled beats of Peter throwing hits at Goblin, actually pulling him back up to throw even more hits and everything. And yeah, I think that fight scene is even more brutal because of actually what happens in the lobby too, which is, so we lost a pretty major player in this movie. We lost a pretty major player. We had to say goodbye to Aunt May. We had to say goodbye to May Parker in this one. So I was less than pleased about that. I was less than happy about that. I just So she got sliced by Goblin's glider. I think she was standing right at the front, and then the glider was hovering nicely behind her, and then Goblin called it in, and then she was literally blown off her feet or thrown off her feet by the glider. But then you can see it, like in that split second, you can see it hitting her so clearly. And then I think it hits her so clearly, but then I think it hits her in like it still hits her in a way that you wonder, because I think the actual blades are still very visible at the front of the glider. But then you wonder, was she just knocked aside? Was she actually hit by it? Was she actually stabbed by it in a really fatal way or something? And then she's just lying on the ground. But then I think after that, Goblin throws a grenade too, and then Peter fails to catch that. So then you wonder, oh, is she gonna be blown to smithereens? Then he's gonna have to find her in that wreckage or something. But then no, then she still gets up. But then she's still hurt. Like the lead up, like those like that kind of that kind of minute long lead up to her death was honestly so drawn out. I kept on questioning: is she gonna die? Okay, no, she's gonna live. Is she gonna die? Like it really sounds like she's gonna die, but then because that final scene before she dies too, is easily the most iconic scene that we've had with her and Peter, and it's her final scene with him. It's her final scene. That is where Aunt May gives Peter with great power comes great. Like they even go with the exact words too. Like because then after everything has happened, like the villains have escaped, they've fought back, they've caused destruction, they've caused chaos, they've escaped, they've actually fought back against Peter's plan and everything. So then Peter starts to wonder if doing this was actually worth it. Like if they were just gonna escape, if they were just gonna hurt people, and if they were just gonna do this if they were just gonna do this all along, then he starts to wonder if actually helping them in any way was actually worth it at all. If maybe sending them back to get killed was for the best. Like Strange said. In the first, because then Strange even actually said that their deaths are actually just one of many things that lead up to like how the multiverse is meant to roll. So I think he said stopping them is not worth the energy or the time or the effort it would take compared to actually saving the multiverse as a whole. So then he comes back with a device that then actually would send them back as they are. But then Peter remembers the mission that May suggested he take on himself, and he actually remembers, sending but then he himself, like I think Peter himself has enough of a conscience where he recognizes that sending them back just to die would be brutal, and he recognizes that if he has the chance to save them, like May said, he should absolutely take it. So yeah, that happens, but then of course, he tries to save them, but then Goblin fights back, and then Goblin inspires the others to actually try and take their power for themselves, and to try and be gods, and take what they want and everything too, so then the rest of them fight back, and then Octavius being the only one who's actually fixed escapes, but then the rest of them just kind of escape on their own terms and everything, so then, after that, Peter becomes all the more remorseful, and he's like, maybe this wasn't worth it in the end, maybe I should just send them back and got over and done with. But then May's like, no, you did the right thing, you helped them, that's what Spider-Man's all about, he's about helping people, even when the cost of doing that might be even greater, because helping people is always worth it. And then she gives him the line. She gives him the iconic line. She says, with great power, like she reminds him, you have a gift. You can do things that other people can't. And I think even back in Civil War, he kind of paraphrased that himself too. Like in Civil War, Peter's line was, when you can do the things that I can't, when you can do the things that I can, but then you don't, and then the bad things happen. They happen because you didn't do anything to stop them in the first place, and you didn't do what you could to actually try and help intervene and everything. So, with this one, I think May kind of they now have the power to go full force, and they can easily actually execute that line with all the gravitas in the world that they want. So then May tells them you have a gift and you can do things that most people can't. So with that gift, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And when I tell you I gasped hearing her say that, I gasped. I don't know if I was the only one, because I was too focused on myself, but then I gasped, I clapped, I cried, I just did that thing, and then I was reminded, oh yeah, she's been injured, and then that injury can potentially mean one thing, and then they confirm it, then she actually needs to lie down and take a breath and catch her breath and everything, but then eventually that leads to her actually dying, and that scene as well, Peter actually having to watch May die right in front of him, and May just kind of slowly phasing out until she's nothing but a cold, pale face that's just dead in the rubble and everything as well. It's just like a whole thing, I think again, also the first time in live action that we've actually had to watch Peter lose May, that we've actually had to watch, because I think he's already lost Uncle Ben before. We just didn't see. So now this time, instead of us having to watch Uncle Ben die this time, now he's lost both of them. Now we have to watch him lose May as well, and that was just that scene between the dead May and Peter as well, to Tom and Marissa, Tom Holland and Marissa Tomei, they absolutely nailed it. And there's so much more I wish we could have seen from Marissa Tomei as Aunt May too. There's so much more I wish we could have seen, but don't know if it wasn't meant to be or if Marvel just really did just really felt like actually experiencing our pain. If Marvel just really wanted our pain and our tears instead, so then they decided to actually kill her off. So maybe not everyone feels as strongly as I did. Maybe some people weren't bothered by that at all. But then me, I actually really I really enjoyed Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I think all the iterations. I think easily like I think easily like the more kind of earlier iconic kind of performances go to Rosemary Harris as Aunt May in Maguire's trilogy. Like she had some really kind of iconic kind of speeches and monologues, and she had some really iconic moments as Aunt May. And then even Garfield's one too. She was younger. She was actually kind of like more of like a kind of supporter of Peter Parker, and she was more like an actual mother figure to him as well. In like a kind of like a actually watching him grow up and actually taking care of him kind of way. Like she was easily given more of the mother figure role, but then with this one, with Marissa, I think again. Homecoming, she was great. Far From Home, they really didn't give her a whole lot to actually work with. So I think it's just like like I wish we had more of her in Far From Home. Besides from her being besides from her being in like a summer fling with Happy and everything, and even in this one they reference that too. I think the May and Happy stuff just didn't. I really don't care about that stuff, and I think honestly, you know, kind of wish they didn't do that because like not only do I not care, I just really think it didn't really add anything it didn't really add anything to their characters either. But like I feel like it was mostly just like a funny kind of like it was mostly meant to be like a little goofy thing that like a goofy thing they added for those characters. But then even then like the fling itself like didn't really kind of add anything to their individual characters either. Like even like for them like the only time the only time they referenced it was with Peter asking them if they were together, and then in No Way Home it's like May confirming that it was just like a summer fling, so that's all it really was. I'm not really into you that way, and then Happy's just crying and stuff, and then even like that, I think the final scene is even more emotional with Happy finally driving by his apartment to see it practically destroyed, and then looking through the window and seeing Peter kind of crouched beside May's body and in tears and everything, actually finding out that okay, May's gone now, so now he's got no one else, so that's the whole thing. So yeah, but then yeah, the May and Happy stuff, it just didn't really kind of I didn't really care about it. Just almost wish it hadn't happened. So then maybe they could actually focus more on Peter and Aunt May in this one. But then what they did do, they did it great. What they actually did do with this one, they did it great. But then just kind of sucks that that's the last we actually get of her before he moves on. So. Yeah, but yeah, I again, Marissa Tomei's Aunt May. I think as Aunt May too, she nailed it. I think from the get go, people definitely kind of like talked a lot about how like she's not only young, but she's also like the most attractive of all the actresses to play Aunt May before her and everything. So people kind of hyper focus on that. I think, admittedly, even in Homecoming, they did actually kind of reference that a little bit with other side characters too, like her getting free stuff on the house at the restaurant, and even that guy who runs the sandwich shop being like, oh, she's a hot Italian woman and everything. So I think they definitely did play off of that for a little bit in Civil War and also in the in Homecoming. But then I think going forward from that, they actually did kind of tone it down like a little bit, but then they actually then replaced it with her actually being in like the fling thing with Happy, and then No Way Home, I feel like, is when we actually got Aunt May being Aunt May, and actually kind of like her, like, also like in the way that she actually knows about Peter being Spider-Man and supports him, and actually believes that he's actually helping people with his gift and actually helping people with his Spider-Man persona and everything. So then, again, wish we could have gotten more of that. Like if they'd actually kept around and actually kept around for the college, for the new trilogy, if it is a college trilogy, then that would have been even more amazing. But I think for the sake of drama and for the sake of the ending that Peter gets in this movie, he just had to lose everyone, and that includes Aunt May. So, yeah. So yeah, then in the end, that makes the fight between him and Goblin even more brutal. Like, here's kind of like the actual sparking line, being like Goblin returning, like after all the villains have been cured and after all the other villains have been kind of like been turned good again. Then Goblin returns, and then that sparks the new fight, and then it's like, he's like, oh, Peter Parker, too weak to send me home to die because you're so good and you're so heroic and so moral and everything. And then that's when Peter's anger comes, like, he's reminded, in that moment, Peter's reminded of exactly what Goblin took from him, he's reminded of exactly how pissed off he is, and then he's like, no, you know what, I'm not even going to send you home, I'm just going to kill you myself, I'm going to kill you right here, right now, just me and you, just hands and fists and feet and all that kind of jazz, and obviously not that extensive, like the lines are much shorter than I'm actually saying them right now, but still, the implication, the emotional discharge is there. Like, you know, I'm gonna kill you myself. I'm gonna kill you with my bare freaking hands and everything. So then that again, that fight scene, it's just a straight up fist fight, just a straight up fist fight. You know, like little to no gadgets besides from him using the webs. And even then, he uses the webs like once, maybe twice, maybe three times at most. And then Goblin pulls out the blade and tries to cut him and everything. So besides from that, it's all just good old fashioned like bobs and like dodges and weaves and punches and right hooks and left hooks and everything. So that whole scene, just a good old fashioned. I think it definitely it reminds me quite a bit. And I think I do wonder deep down if this was the intention. Like, it reminds me a lot of like just how brutal the Spider-Man 1 fight scene was, of like Maguire's Garfield versus Goblin 2. Like, that one had Goblin throwing a lot of punches and Pete actually starting to actually keep up and trying to fight back and everything until the very end when he got his own kind of motivational spark and everything. So with that one too, I think that there was a lot of actual kind of like hand-to-hand choreography involved that was really, really brutal and really harsh and really good. So with this one, they nailed that here too. They nailed that here with Tom Spidey too, like him just kind of not even wanting to hold back, him actually him wanting to kill him, but then he ends up actually just kind of going really kind of full force and stuff. And I think that kind of stuff reminded me of definitely reminded me of how even in the comics, like I think it's explored. It's definitely explored in the comics of how Peter actively pulls his punches. I think there's a comic storyline where I haven't read it, but I've heard about it, but I haven't read it. Where I've heard about it, but I haven't read it. But there's a storyline where I think it's actually it's Dr. Octavius that actually that possesses Spider-Man's body. Like he possesses Peter's body and finds out who he is, and then he actually he goes toe to toe with one of the villains, and I think he punches the villain so hard that I think that their jaw dislocates and everything, and that's when he realizes that, you know, oh, Peter actually has a lot more strength than his own villains realize. Like Peter, like Spider-Man actively pulls his punches when he's fighting them. He actually has the power to actually knock someone's head off or to actually punch a hole into their chest or something. So Spider-Man actively knows his own strength and he pulls his punches because he doesn't believe in killing. He doesn't want to kill anyone when he fights them. So he actively does pull his punches, and then that's when Octavius finally realizes Peter's true potential as Spider-Man and his true strength as Spider-Man. So with this one, that kind of mentality still definitely comes into play because he's repeatedly pulling Goblin up and just punching him and pounding him and doing all this stuff. So yeah, it's crazy. It's just easily just seeing that for the first time and the audio dimming out and the punches being muffled and just, you know, Peter just seeing red and he just wants to kill Goblin. And he eventually picks up his glider and goes to throw it into his face too, but then Toby comes through and he stops him from killing and everything, and that's like a huge step up for both of their characters too. So that's like a big deal. So there's that. So yeah, that fight scene was just just yeah. So yeah, now let's talk about the Spider-Man, our Spider Boys coming back into the mix, into the fold. So yeah, as I said, the scene of them actually returning again into Ned's home. Ned became a magician somewhat. Ned, like, I think he had like a funny little quip with Doctor Strange earlier in the movie. He was like, you know, oh I get these constant tingles or feelings in my fingers, and my family, like, apparently there's like a history of magic in his family. So then his mother thinks he might be a magician or he might have some kind of wizardry up his sleeve or something, and Strange just kind of being all sassy and being like, no, you're not a magician. He's just like, you know, well then seek a doctor or a physician. It's probably a medical condition and not like you having magic in your fingertips. But then Peter does steal the sling ring from Strange in the mirror dimension, and then he actually does the mirror dimension fight scene was also so cool too. Actually seeing, I think seeing Peter solve the mirror dimension was honestly one of the coolest things ever. Seeing Peter actually looking at the mirror dimension and being like, you know, oh, the mirror dimension is just geometry. Geometry is just math. I can do math, and him firing all sorts of webs at different angles and actually managing to web up and actually managing to defeat Doctor Strange in his own element. That is one of the best uses of Peter's intellect we've seen in any of these movies. Him using the mirror dimension against Doctor Strange, him using geometry in the mirror dimension against Doctor Strange, easily one of the best uses of his intellect and his adaptability to a new environment that we've seen in these movies. So that was great. The mirror dimension fight with Doctor Strange was really great to see. So that was cool. And I think overall too, I think with that one too, I think like another point to add on to the Doctor Strange and Spider-Man stuff too. I think you know, it definitely shows like a difference in their mentality too. Like with Doctor Strange, it's like it's not just I think with Doctor Strange, with Doctor Strange, it's not just a belief that the multiverse is like a grand scaled plan that has all these different kind of elements, and all of them need to work regardless of how you feel about them. But I think with Doctor Strange, it's also, like, Doctor Strange is not only a seasoned sorcerer; he's a seasoned hero. He's a I think he can somewhat count as a veteran, but he's also his own hero. He's had years of his own experiences, and he as even as Doctor Strange, even as a sorcerer, he's had years of his own experiences and everything. And he's dealt with all these different things, and even in this one of the bigger kind of selling points is the fact that it is his line that the multiverse is a concept that they know frighteningly little about. Like they don't know nearly as much about the multiverse. Like they don't know nearly as much about the multiverse as they would like to or as they should. So then, because of that, it's like, instead of trying to fix everything that comes out of the multiverse, they need to put everything back into place in the multiverse and then worry about more stuff later. But I think for him, like, because he sees doing what needs to be done, you know, like in the grand scheme of things, as more of a priority. I think he feels like he kind of doesn't really have the luxury of worrying about everyone's problems, and he doesn't have the luxury of actually worrying about trying to fix people, trying to help people who are seen as villains and everything. But then with Peter, not only, like, I think he has the mixture of his own conscience actually telling him to help people, and also May kind of highlighting the importance of actually helping people when you can help them in his life too. So with him, I think it's like a mixture of that kind of experience mixed in with that kind of naivete, like the experience and understanding of like the realism of the situation mixed in with the kind of idealism and naivete of Peter wanting to help everyone and wanting to do good by everyone, but then seeing the consequences of that kind of coming into play. But then Strange knowing that, like, what these guys go through is pretty much, nothing compared to the grand scheme of the multiverse, and everything needing to be exactly where it is, and everything needing to be fixed. I think that needing to be fixed. I think that parallel kind of coming into play across both of those characters was actually really well done in this movie too. I think it especially comes into play at the very end. It especially comes into play at the very end, so that was really well done. But so yeah, I think Toby and Andrew come in. So then it's revealed that not only did the villains come in, but the villain's enemy, which is the hero Spider-Man, that both Spider-Men also came through, and they kind of landed like somewhere in New York in the main MCU Earth and everything. So that was really cool to see. Then of course, like, the first reveal is Andrew's Spider-Man, which I think the way they did, the way they did it too was definitely kind of like the perfect build up too, because then, I think they start off with the more recent one and then they actually build up to the first one, like the one that started it all, the one that actually started it all. I think before any notion of an MC, before any notion of like a cinematic universe or like a big superhero franchise or like a big Marvel movie kind of universe or anything, they build up to the one that started it all with Tobey Maguire himself returning as his own iconic portrayal of Spider-Man. I think they definitely didn't even. I think it's a good. I think not only did they not try and de-age them in any way, but I think the way they went about telling the story of these Spider-Men was that they actually had. It had been years since their movies. I think even, like, there had actually been accurate, like a near enough accurate number of years between now and the last time we saw them in their own movies too. Like, Toby has aged, there's no need to hide that, and then, instead of actually hiding that, they add it on to Peter himself, and like now it's actually canonically been years since Peter faced Venom and Sandman in his own movie too. Like, it's been years since Spider-Man 3, so then, like, those years are added on in No Way Home too. Like, he's actually been Spider-Man for a while now, but then he's also grown, he's matured and everything. He's actually become he's a man now. And everything, so he's actively Spider-Man. And then with Andrew too, I think with Andrew it's been like it's been less time, but then it's also been like an equal amount of experience and time on his own shoulders and on his own belt too. Like, he's been Spider-Man, and he's been struggling with his own more recent grief, and he's been dealing with his own stuff. So that actually came into play. I think the way they did the Spider-Man in this movie was so good. It was so good, and it was so pure, and it was so kind of so dramatic and so thoughtful and so, like, knowledgeable and so kind of respectful and everything. I just want to point out, right? I think I'm not trying to provoke any. I'm not trying to fan any flames here. I'm not trying to provoke any kind of any discourse. I'm not trying to fan any flames or do anything of the sort. I just want to say, I loved Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man since day one. Day one, like the Amazing Spider-Man 1, I loved that movie to bits. I watched that movie when it first came out. I watched that so many times, and it was just so good. It was like, even back then it was like a comfort movie, but then back then it was like, oh, Spider-Man had come back into my life, because Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was like my gateway into the world of superheroes and comics and this kind of universe of of kind of pop culture and everything. Because then I think back then I barely knew of Star Wars. I pretty much only kind of was aware of Star Wars, and I think I'd seen like one of the movies maybe. Um, but then even then, like I think I wasn't really aware of superheroes. I didn't really know anything about them. So then Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire, that was my gateway into Spider-Man. So seeing, seeing all three Spider-Man in this movie is nothing short of iconic. It's nothing short of something for the history books. It's nothing short of something that is definitely, it's story worthy material. I think it's the best possible mixture of story worthy material and fan service too. Like, it works really well for the story. It works great for the story. Like, having Tom's Peter meeting these other iterations of him who have years of experience under their belts and who have been Spider-Man for years and have faced their own fair share of trials and tribulations, and they've been Spider-Man in their own worlds for like a fair amount of time. So then they come along, and they come along with their own advice and their own kind of their own postures and their own presentations and their own kind of lives and everything. And that completely changes Tom's Peter for the better and everything. So that kind of happens. But then it's also great fan service. Like, fan service does not have to be a bad thing. Even if something is fan service, that doesn't make it bad. Doesn't automatically negate its value or its kind of its relevance to a plot. Like, fan service can be great. We had mounds of fan service in Endgame, like Avengers Assemble, Thor picking up the Cap picking up the hammer, and all these different things coming in. We had mountains of fan service in Endgame, and that was still that was still a really fun movie. Fan service can always be great. Fan service can always kind of help make like a movie watching experience better and everything. In this case, it definitely does. Like, seeing all three Spider-Man swinging, like jumping out of the rafters and swinging across, and even using each other's webs and landing one after the other on the Statue of Liberty. My God, that shot was That shot was just That shot was It was gold. It was golden. It was absolutely golden. That shot. Seeing all three Spider-Men running out, jumping out, and swinging together, and actually landing together one after the other. Oh God, just yeah, and I think especially after the second trailer came out, there were all sorts of there were all sorts of scenes and shots that people were breaking down within a frame of its life, actually trying to see where the other Spider-Man could fit in if they had been digitally removed from the trailer. And then that shot is in the trailer. I think the shot itself is in the trailer for like a split second, but then in the movie, like, that shot is actually like it's the exact same shot. Like, the Spider-Man fit very neatly and nicely inside. And I think that I also heard, I think I didn't watch the international trailer, but then I heard that there was actually an international trailer that showed that same shot of Spider-Man jumping from the statue onto the villains. But then in the international trailer, it actually shows a lizard being hit by something, but then doesn't show what he's hit by. So then people theorize that, oh yeah, that has to be one of the other Spider-Man actually hitting him in the face. And then in the movie, it is in fact Andrew Spidey actually. I think one of the Spideys actually, it's hard. I think even the way they dubbed them was Peter 1, Peter 2, and Peter 3. So, not even in chronological order. I think Peter 1 was Tom Holland, Peter 2 was Tobey Maguire, and then Peter 3 was actually Andrew Garfield. So I think, if you went chronological, or like in order of actual release, then Peter 1 would have been Maguire, and Garfield would have been 2, and then Peter 3 would have been Tom. But either way this works too. So that was really great. That was great. Like, even their initial meetings too, like when Peter's mourning May on the roof of the school, and then Ned and MJ find him, and then they actually bring the other Spider-Man with them to that scene as well. Like, them just that shot of them just kind of hiding in the shadows at the top of that kind of bell tower thing, and they actually slowly hop down and find their way down and everything. That was really cool. But yeah, this just Peter meeting his other variants for the first time. Peter meeting like his other his other hims, his other me's for the first time too. That was just, God, Toby and Andrew still got it. Toby and Andrew, to say they've still got it would be an understatement. Actually, to say that they still got it would be an understatement. They definitely still have it. They just absolutely they brought their A game for this movie. They really brought back their memorable and recognizable Peter Parker personas and performances for this one. Like, even them trying to share their own stories of grief too. They're like their own stories of who they have lost and who they have lost in pursuit of being Spider-Man, and who they've lost in their time of being Spider-Man. I think even though with Toby's one, it was like him talking about how he lost Ben and everything, which happened before he was Spider-Man. But then, like him, I think like Ned and MJ had actually informed them beforehand that Peter had just lost May in the lobby fight and everything. So then he was still going through that grief. So then the closest thing that he could have come to is probably Uncle Ben. But that was for Toby, and then for Andrews, obviously it was him having lost Gwen at the end of TASM 2. And that one hits different. I think, I mean, obviously, like I mean, if you say who he has to lose, then it's obviously both of them, because then Gwen still dies in the comics. Gwen canonically still dies in the comics, so then that still happens. But then with the movies, I think I never really cry when Uncle Ben dies. I only ever cry. I never fail to cry when when Gwen dies. But then I think I actually have to actively try and feel sad when Uncle Ben dies. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just overexposure to that kind of to that kind of death. Like if they've done it so many times, or if they've done. I mean, they've done it like twice, but then still, it's like when Uncle Ben dies, I feel sad, but then I just don't I just don't feel as emotionally erect as I do when Gwen dies, because then that whole kind of thing is just like a whole different kind of playing field, and then. But I think it's probably because of the fact that with Uncle Ben, that's the one that kickstarts everything off, and he dies when Peter is still Peter. Like, he's not Spider-Man, he's not using his powers for anything, he's not the hero, he's not meant to be able to stop him with sheer luck, or he's not meant to be able to save Ben just yet. Like, Ben dying is what kind of turns Peter onto this path of being the hero. But then when Gwen dies, that's like a reminder for Peter that the heroes can't always win. That's when he's reminded that heroes sometimes lose as well, and that's the biggest loss. Like he lost Gwen. He lost Gwen as Spider-Man. He lost Gwen as Spider-Man. He lost Gwen when he was the hero, when he fully utilized all of his powers, all of his abilities, all of his strengths and skills and everything, and he still lost Gwen at the hands of Goblin and everything. So that's when that happens. And I think that's why that death hits even harder. That he felt like he was meant to be able to save her, but then he still failed, and that failure is something that he has to live with for the rest of his life. And then Andrew even mentions that too. And Andrew even actually mentions that for Gwen too. Like he lost Gwen, and he even calls Gwen like his MJ, because then MJ is still the one for him in Tom's world and everything. So he's like, I'm never gonna be able to forgive myself for that. I'm gonna carry that grief with me for the rest of my life and everything. So then he accurately reminds fans of just how tragic that death was. But then he also does detail a bit of his actual future. He does detail like a bit of his life carried on from that moment in the darkest way as well. Like, he actually does say, like, he kept on, he does say, like, I kept on trying to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because that's what Gwen would have wanted. But then eventually he then reveals what happened in his future, which was eventually he stopped pulling his punches. Like Andrew's Peter eventually stopped pulling his punches. He got rageful and bitter, his words exactly, and then he actually became a lot more brutal with his actual fighting and everything. So that was quite a shocker to find out too. That was quite a shocker to find out too. The fact that he actually did end up becoming more brutal down the line. He actually did end up being a bit more harsh with his techniques, and he actually did stop pulling his punches, and then that kind of makes me wonder. Like, maybe, like, hopefully we could see. Hopefully one day we could actually see that. Hopefully one day, like, if they do, it really does make me wonder if we could see the Amazing Spider-Man 3 or something. Because I think now, after No Way Home's success and Andrew's stellar performance in reprising his own role as Spider-Man, I think people have really been campaigning for it. And I think to actually have I think what like campaigning under the kind of under the argument that, like, whilst his reprisal in No Way Home was a perfect continuation of his character and like a perfect kind of like amount of closure on his thing in No Way Home, I think it would still be nice to see it continued, or at least kind of like visually justified on screen with a third movie. Actually giving him like, even if you only give him a third movie, then actually at least give him that. Actually give Andrew the chance to actually do the best kind of like ending for the best ending for his movie that he can. Because the Amazing Spider-Man 2, like, as much as I enjoy it, I can still kind of admit like how messy it does seem in certain ways and at certain points. And I think it's because of the fact that on the one hand the studio intervened way too much and actually added way too many people in that didn't really get a chance to shine as well as it could have. But then at the same time, it's I think even back then they did say that they actually wanted to do like a Sinister Six movie, which is why they teased some of those characters at the end. So there's clearly a lot more they want to do. So now, especially now with this one, I think one of their interactions being Peter 1 asking the rest of them, like, oh, like, what are some of the craziest villains you guys have fought? And then Peter 1 and Peter 2 bonding over having fought aliens on Earth and in space, and then Peter 3 being like, oh, I only fought like a guy in like a rhinoceros machine, or him being like, oh, I want to fight an alien too. And then, surprise, surprise, one of the post-credit scene, or the mid-credit scene for No Way Home is Venom himself, actually, like, Eddie, with having Venom inside him, he's actually he's learning about this new universe, he's learning about the new universe he's been taken into, which I think that one has been surprising people. That one has been really surprising people too. I think that one has been like, has just been the people like wondering exactly, because then if the spell was if the spell pushed in if the spell pulled in people from other universes that knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, then how the hell did Venom get pulled in? Because he's never met Peter Parker before. But then I think other people have been making the very solid argument that that Venom contains millions of years of hive knowledge from various other Venoms throughout the multiverse in his head. So I think Venom also has access to knowledge that other Venoms know that even he himself hasn't experienced yet. So then because of that, there's like a Venom in his head. Maybe even the Venom from the actual from the Maguire trilogy that actually that was still a Venom, because I think that one was still a symbiote from outer space that latched onto Eddie in that one. So maybe because that Venom, I think even though it's dead, maybe because that Venom knew Spider-Man and knew Peter Parker, maybe that one shared the knowledge with the Hive Mind, and then the Hive Mind found out about it, and then across the multiverse all the Venoms knew about it. So then this one connected through that one, so then that was like that seems like an interesting enough kind of theory, so then that one was pulled through because of that. But then we never actually saw Eddie or Venom in this movie at all, which I think was probably for the best, because then we already had enough characters to juggle as it was. So then with this one, it's like, like this Venom, yes and no, he gets to be in this movie for like a significant amount of time. Like I think in this one, so yeah, like in this one, Venom actually he learns a little bit about this new universe, about the Avengers. He learns about Iron Man. He learns about Hulk, and he learns about Thanos and the stones and everything and stuff. So he learns a bit about that and about the blip, but then immediately afterwards, because Doctor Strange's spell affects him too, he gets sent straight back to his universe and everything. So then you think that's the last we see of Venom. That you think, oh, that means we get no more Venom in the MCU, but no, there is a little teeny tiny little baby blob of Venom left behind from his goo and everything, and it moves. It's a sentient, living piece of Venom goo. So then, like a piece of Venom, a little piece of Venom has been left behind in the MCU. So that definitely leaves a lot open to interpretation. It leaves a lot open to interpretation. So all we've yet to see, I think realistically, all we've yet to see now is Eddie Brock. Like the MCU's Eddie Brock. All we've yet to see is the MCU's take on Eddie Brock, and see who he is and how he is and where he is and everything. And then eventually he might come up against him. And then if he does come up, I think if Peter does come up against an alien made of black goo, he's gonna remember hearing about it from Peter 2. So he's gonna actually remember, oh, you're the alien made of black goo that another version of me fought from way back when. So hey, what's up, dude? I mean, he might literally be like that. Like, I think knowing him, he might literally be like that. So yeah, so that happened. So then Venom's been sent back. So then yeah, I think because I think and like another kind of fan driven, fan supported kind of campaign is definitely not only the Amazing Spider-Man 3 happening with Andrew Garfield, but then him meeting Tom Hardy's Venom, not only meeting but then potentially being in the same universe as Tom Hardy's Venom too. And I think it would work because I think there's no actual kind of denial that there's no direct denial that Tom Hardy's Venom is set in a different universe. I think he's in San Francisco. You can't really say that they're not, because I think they are in two different cities. So then because of that, it's like it would be even harder for them to interact being that far apart. But then it could easily be made so. I think they're both Sony exclusive. I think those are the two only Sony exclusive properties there are. I think I think they could easily kind of collaborate on another thing entirely. I think they could easily retain the rights for the Amazing Spider-Man property, which is still theirs. I think the Spider-Man stuff. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how minute the details are, or like how finite or like how specific the details are. Like if it's like oh, they can't do anything with Tom Holland's Spider-Man without consulting Disney first, but then the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield is still their own intellectual properties, and because of that, maybe they can expand upon that. Maybe they can actually make some new stuff with that too. Potentially even with the support Marvel by their side, so maybe then like a TASM 3 can happen, and maybe it could even happen with Andrew and Tom Hardy together as Venom and Spidey. Maybe it could happen. Maybe it could happen. I think it would be cool. I think it'd be cool. I think that'd be really cool. So I guess only time will tell. But yeah, no, that was great. That stuff was really really great. But yeah, I think overall the whole dynamic between Toby between all three Peters just kind of reeks of brotherhood and friendship, but also predominantly brotherhood. Like even literally Andrew's Peter's line being like, oh, this is so cool. I've always wanted brothers. I've always wanted brothers. So even him, like the way he sees him, he like I think even like his line, like that line of like that line, and then even his line later on, like when they're finally formulating a plan, actually learning how to work as a team, and Tom leading them and everything, and then he's like, like before they go, he's like, wait. I love you guys, and I think that line was even improvised by Andrew himself. Like Andrew revealed, I think, not too long ago that he actually improvised that line right on the spot too. I think like him, Andrew, like his entire experience of being on this movie was that he was just happy to be there. He was happy to not only not only put the mask on again and actually be Spider-Man again, but he was just happy to be with these other two great actors who also had the privilege of actually being able to play Spider-Man, and he was happy to be a part of that legacy and be a part of that kind of universe and that story and everything. So he was just happy to be there with all of them, and I think you definitely get that vibe from him. I think despite how to this day how grief stricken he is by Gwen's loss and what it turned him into, he is still very happy to be there to be alongside his Spider Bros and to be alongside them and to be saving the world with them and to be fighting with them and to be with them and everything. So that's great. And I think speaking of Gwen's death too, I think a lot of people theorize that Tom's Peter would try and save MJ, but then he'd fail, and then which he did in the movie. He actually did get knocked aside by Goblin's glider at the last second, and then Andrew Spider-Man sees MJ falling, and he's like, no. Not today, Satan. Not today, Satan, and not today, Goblin. He is gonna save MJ if it is the last thing he ever does as Spider-Man. He yeets himself off of that scaffolding, and he just pushes all the other falling debris out of the way, catches her perfectly, fires a web instead of the scaffolding instead, because the last time he fired a web at an actual person at Gwen, and then she died. And this time he actually catches MJ in his arms and lands pitch perfectly and saves her life and everything. God, it was like even without going in with those theories or expectations, I think even going in with those theories and expectations and all that kind of stuff, it was still such a such a beautifully executed moment of like him actually being able to save the love of his life in another universe and in like another lifetime, him being able to say because I think you kind of. I feel like you definitely kind of had a feeling about that when he called Gwen his MJ, he said that Gwen was his MJ, because then he recognized that MJ was not only Peter's girlfriend, but then also the love of his life, the same way that Gwen was the love of his life, and he still felt greatly about her the same way that Tom's Peter felt greatly about MJ as well. So he recognized that, and I think he recognized that the entire time. I think especially when she was falling to her death, like he recognized that then too. So it's like, what, I will be dead. I could not save the Gwen Stacy of my own universe. I could not save the love of my own life, but I will be damned if I cannot save the love of my other life. So I think kind of weird to think about, like he literally just managed to save the love of his life in like another universe, in like another lifetime, in like another iteration. But then it's still really sweet to think that like at least this time he can vindicate himself and actually free himself of that pain, knowing that he saved someone else and saved another life and managed to get it right this time. So I think again, theories aside, it was still beautifully executed, it was still beautifully done, and still amazing to watch and everything. So that was wow. That was great. So yeah. And I think even their kind of newly founded kind of connection really offers like a whole kind of new path of possibilities. I think, not to say that they're going to do any crossovers again in the future, but then if they did, then it would be great to see that again, like to see them reunite after being introduced here and now, and to see like exactly where these paths take them in the future, like where these paths take them, where this kind of newfound knowledge of each other takes them, because now none of the Peters got their knowledge erased of each other. Like the Peters went back to their own respective positions in the multiverse, knowing of each other. So Peter 1 knows about Peter 2 and 3, and Peter 3 knows about Peter 1 2, and vice versa and everything. So they all know that they all remember each other. They all remember each other. They all remember each other. They all know of each other. So that kind of stuff definitely it was maintained across the multiverse. I think maybe even the villains knew. I think maybe just maybe even the villains knew, but then the villains were all sent back once they were fixed too. I think they still delivered the serum to Goblin. They Octavius came through at the very end too. I think they managed to fix Sandman, managed to turn him back into human. They managed to do Electro too. I think Octavius came in when they were doing Electro, and then took out the arc reactor and put the little plug thing back in, and actually decharged him, so he came through. They had some really nice reunions between the other actual actors too. I think they had some really nice reunions between Electro and Peter 3 of like Garfield and Jamie Foxx, and having them be together. I think their scene was really cool. I think their scene was a lot longer. I think it was a lot cooler. I think it was that was actually I think yeah, it didn't hit me until then. That was actually Electro's first time seeing his Spider-Man unmasked. He had never seen his Spider-Man without the mask on. He never knew who he was underneath, so he didn't think that. I think that's why his line of like, you wear that suit, you got such a pretty face, you help a lot of poor people, you're from Queens, you're from New York, you're like the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, you're not like some rich billionaire or anything. So I think that's why he kind of thought maybe Spider-Man might be black. So he thought his Spider-Man was actually like a black kid underneath. So. And then I think then that's when the Miles Morales reference came through. He's like, you know what, like, and then Peter's like, oh God, I'm sorry to not be able to fulfill those visions of yours. And then he's like, you know what, don't worry about it. Like, there's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere, right? There's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere. So I think now people will know Miles Morales somewhere out there, being Spider-Man, or on his way to being Spider-Man. So that then raises the question of, like could we see, if they do continue the TASM series, then could we see Miles Morales in that one, or could we see Peter meeting Miles in, or could we see Peter 1 meeting Miles in his future, in like the next trilogy he meets Miles, and then maybe he kind of helps be Spider-Man with him or something. So it's just like something to look forward to for the future. So something to definitely keep an eye out for the future. Like if we ever actually do see Miles in that one. I think it was last week. I think it might have been before. I think before or just after the New Year. I actually finished playing Miles Morales Spider-Man. I loved that game. I loved the game. Naji Jeter, I think, is the actor who plays Miles in that one too. I think he was introduced in the first PS4 Spider-Man game, and then he had his own standalone one in that. And he's going to be with Peter in Spider-Man 2 as well in 2023. So that's going to be really cool to see. That's really fun. But then he was Miles in that one. He knocked it out of the park. He absolutely blew it out of the park. I loved his Miles to bits and pieces, and especially in a standalone game, he really shone and had like a chance to be his own Spider-Man and to be the Spider-Man in that game too. That was a really, really fun time. So I do wonder maybe if they might actually do like if they do another one of these Spider-Verse kind of crossover, like if they do another one of these kind of live action Spider-Verse movies, then I think next time maybe they might bring in the PS4 Spider-Man and actually have them coming into live action too. That would be really cool. And then maybe even doing Spider-Verse, because I think they already have the animated Spider-Verse stuff too, and that's getting its part one this year. Later on this year too, so maybe actually bringing them into live action, or actually bringing the other actors into the animated series too, like into the animated movies, actually bringing Garfield and Maguire and Holland into the animated format, and actually animating them, and actually putting like an animated spin on them too, so that'd be fun. But either way, we had that reference. I think that one was a nice, somewhat more lengthy kind of introduction / interaction between Garfield, Spider-Man, and Electro and everything. So that was cool. And then we had like an arguably more nostalgic one between Octavius and Maguire Spider-Man, of like Octavius actually meeting his Peter, for the first time after all these years, and even his line of like, oh, you're all grown up, you're a man now, you're officially the Spider-Man, you're all grown up, you're all older, you're mature, and you're all grown up and everything. So that was a cool line. And then he's like, how have you been all these years? How you doing? And he's like, you know what? Trying to do better. Actually calling it back to Spider-Man 2. Trying to do better. Trying to be better. Trying to do better and everything. So that was really fun. So great interactions between them and their individual kind of antagonists all around. So that was cool. And I think there's definitely a lot of growth with that final fight scene of like Peter 2 stopping Peter 1 from actually killing Goblin 2. Like that is when Peter 2 and Peter 3 are watching him, and then MJ are watching him. They're all seeing him just unloading on Goblin with these beats and punches and everything, and then pretty sure they're all thinking, oh my god, he's actually gonna try and kill Goblin, because then he eventually stops punching, but then actually goes down to reach for the glider, and then just completely throws over his head and everything. So that's when Peter 2 comes in and stops it from hitting Goblin at all. So I think that's when, I think his Spider-Man trilogy kind of focused on, one of the aspects it focused on was actually him dealing with how to tell Harry about the fact that, Spider-Man didn't kill, that not only was he Spider-Man, but that also that, Spider-Man didn't kill Goblin. Goblin killed himself with his own glider that Spider-Man just dodged out of the way from, and everything. So then that happened, and then the almost the exact same thing happened with Harry too, like him giving his life by jumping in front of his own glider and actually saving Spider-Man's life and everything. So, but with him, I think um I think for me, it actually flashes back. I think it was in Spider-Man. Was it 2 or 3? I think either 2 or 3. I think when Peter actually reveals to him, I think no, I think it was in Spider-Man 3, because I remember. I remember with Spider-Man 3, that was about like his vengeance, and how his vengeance was actually festered by the Venom suit being on him, and the Venom suit actually brought out more of his rage and more of his anger and his vengeance and everything, and that's why he actually went after Sandman, because he found out that guy was involved with the same guy who initially shot Uncle Ben. So with that one, he took out Sandman, but then told Aunt May the story about how Spider-Man had killed Sandman, and how he was happy because then vengeance had been enacted. But then Aunt May said, it's I'd like it should never be up to us who gets to live or who gets to die or who deserves to die or anything like that kind of power should not be in anyone's hands. So then she didn't agree with Spider-Man killing him out of vengeance or in the name of Uncle Ben or anything. So, and especially like her saying, like, Uncle Ben would never want us living with vengeance in our hearts or anything. So then he recognizes that. He recognizes that Peter's about to do what he very nearly did the first time round had his antagonist not had powers. And everything. So then he actually stops Peter from doing something that's going to weigh on his heart forever, and it's never going to bring May back. It's not going to make him. I think he even told Peter to begin with, like, he wanted the guy dead, and then he actually got what he wanted in the end, even if he himself didn't kill him specifically. But then he got what he wanted, but it didn't make him feel any better. He like now he just had to live with the fact that he had actually. That he had inadvertently caused the death of a guy who was still a criminal, but then he didn't really feel, like his vengeance had been fulfilled by that guy's death. He didn't really feel any better as a person. He didn't really feel better as Spider-Man. He didn't really feel better as anything. So he knew killing him would only, make killing Goblin would only make him a killer, and it would only really put blood on Peter's hands that he didn't really need to have. And everything. So I think that kind of growth definitely shone through here too, like him actually, like Peter then actually finally having come to the understanding of that, not only should it not be up to them who gets to live or who gets to die, but then vengeance should also never be the answer to their problems, and vengeance should never be something that the Spider-Man or the Spider Heroes actually seek out for themselves. So that was a really nice piece of growth. That actually really came in full force at the very end of the film. So then, thanks to Goblin pumpkin bombing the multiverse box device thing, the multiverse cracks open like an egg over the Statue of Liberty, and you got all these different cracks in the sky and all these different kind of silhouetted, glowy figures coming through. You can't. I still remember. You couldn't make any of them out. You couldn't really kind of tell who was who, because then I wondered, would they use that scene as an opportunity to try and cameo other variants in other universes, like maybe actually cameoing the Fantastic Four or the X-Men, or cameoing other characters in other variants, but no, just little silhouettes of random celestial figures, and not even the celestials themselves, but just random celestial figures and random celestial kind of people and other kind of figures in other dimensions and everything that were waiting to come through and everything. And truth be told, right, besides from Kang, because I think they explored in Loki how Kang had different variants of himself, and a lot of them were bad, and a lot of them were evil, and a lot of those kind of variants of Kang were actually bent on conquest and like victory and waging war across the multiverse. Like Kang had a lot of variants of himself that were actually, hell bent on war and conquest and all that kind of stuff. So besides from Kang, I can't think. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any at all, but I personally can't think of any other characters who would be like that, or like any other reasons. Like, I think, I can't, like, besides from the Kang stuff, I can't currently think of any reasons why having the multiverse be open like that would be a bad thing. Like why having the because thing, it didn't say that the multiverse was gonna become one giant, like, was gonna become one thing like after Crisis, but then, it just it, like, I think as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, they just said that the multiverse was going to open up, so then other people could come in from their dimensions. But then there was no direct clarification as to whether they were good or bad, or if we actually need to be worried about them. Because then if they weren't, then what exactly would be the bad thing about having the multiverse be open then? Because I think, you know, the multiverses are set. I think the Loki stuff would then signify that the multiverse has actually been kind of segregated because of the fact that like each different universe has its own variant that's actually more malicious than the other and everything. So then because of that, but then so far that's only really been applied to Kang. So then as long as you get ready to fight the Kangs, then it's fine. But then the other ones, it's like like maybe there are even other heroes in other universes that could actually be really useful over here. Maybe you could actually have people meet other people because then you know, just it just kind of got me thinking, like okay, so then you keep an eye out for Kang, but then is there anyone else that they actually specifically need to worry about, or is there anyone else that they actually need to kind of be wary of or something? So then there's no direct confirmation as to whether or not that's the case. So then it's just random. So then without that, it's just randomly like, oh, the multiverse is opening, and we need to be worried about that for some reason. So now we need to close it off and everything. So that was the whole thing, but then by the end of it, it's like Stranger's concern was like oh they're starting to come through, and I can't stop them. So now we need to figure out something else to do, or else we're gonna actually lose everything. So then that's apparently the new dilemma. So that's when Peter and Strange pull off an entirely new spell. They pull off a whole new spell, which is actually making everyone forget who Peter Parker is and that Peter Parker even exists. So that is the new spell they've pulled off. That is the new spell that they've actually concocted to make everyone think. Because then, Peter's kind of conclusion is that oh, they're coming here because he's Peter Parker and because the world knows who Peter Parker is, and that was what they were trying to reverse with the original spell and everything. So and because the spell worked in counter effect too, the spell actually pulled in the spell was pulling in everyone who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man and everything. So then his solution is, oh, make everyone forget who I am, make everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But then I think not just that, I think not just make everyone forget who, not just making everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but then they also forget who Peter Parker is in general. Because then I think they tried the original one, like they tried to make everyone forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but then that spell kept backfired and everything, and it was too late to redo the spell. So now the only thing they could do was actually try a whole new spell. So then that's when Peter got the idea of like, oh. So now make everyone forget who Peter Parker is, make everyone forget that Spider-Man has like a human alter ego at all. Like now there is only Spider-Man. Now there's only Spider-Man. Like now there's no Peter Parker. So I think that changes the game. That changes the game. Like to me that changes the game on so many different levels. Because it means that now Peter Parker has no alter ego to protect him, but then he also doesn't really need one. Because then he does still need one, but then I think now he gets a fresh start in the most depressing way possible. Now he literally gets a fresh start at life in the most depressing way possible because now he lost Ned and MJ. He told them before he told them before the spell actually happened. He told them you're gonna forget who I am, but I'll find you again and I'll remind you and I'll make sure you know and everything. But he lost them. He lost May. May's dead now. May's dead, and he visited her grave. But then he lost Happy too. He lost Happy. Happy forgot who he was, and he and Happy just kind of happened to find each other at May's grave and just kind of mourning her in private and everything. So that happened. Any of the other Avengers who knew him have now forgotten who he was. But I think to be fair, it was only really Tony that knew him, and Tony died long before. And then Steve is Steve. Banner doesn't know. Bruce doesn't know who Spider-Man is anymore. I think to be fair to begin with, I think he didn't really know who he was to begin with anyway. All the other heroes have forgotten who he is. But I think they've forgotten who Peter Parker is, but Spider-Man is still known. Spider-Man is still known as evidenced by Jameson still having his podcast going and him still talking about how much of a menace that Spider-Man is. But then now he's back to talking about how no one really knows who's behind the mask, and Spider-Man is now like a nameless, faceless kind of crusader fighting for justice and everything and all that kind of stuff. So now no one knows who Peter Parker is, and definitely no one knows who the Spider-Man is Peter Parker. But now it's now everyone he knew and loved. Strange explicitly told him, everyone who knows you and loves you, they would all forget who you are, and they don't, and they'd all forget, and it would be like you never existed to begin with, which I feel like that might be a bit more of a complicated thing, because then there are still public records. There's still records of him having gone to high school. There's still his birth certificate. There's still his passports. There's still actual physical, representations of who he is, and the fact that he existed. So I think, like all they really did was wipe the memories. All they really did was actually wiping the memories. So then, if someone stumbles across a lost ID of someone called Peter Parker, because I think he's still going by the Peter Parker name. Because I think when he walked into the cafe that MJ now works at, he still introduced himself as Peter Parker. So I think he still goes by that same name. He still goes by the same ID. But then it's just like, she doesn't remember who he is. She doesn't really know who he is. So that's the only real kind of memory issue there. That definitely provides some leeway to have like some really interesting kind of independent stories going forward, and to actually have Peter like actually discovering slash rediscovering his independence and actually trying to figure out who he is. Because at the very end, he moved out like as a whole, like he completely ditched the apartment that he and May had. He completely ditched that apartment. He actually got his own apartment in New York City. And I think he's now gonna begin his. He had some college textbooks in his packing out boxes and everything. He had some textbooks and everything. So he's gonna move into his own place. He's gonna start college. He's gonna do his own thing and everything. So I think that kind of does make me wonder, like, are they gonna do the college trilogy? Are they gonna actually introduce him to some new characters? Or I think hopefully they don't throw Ned and MJ away completely, but then literally introducing himself to new people that he's never met before, like Harry and Gwen. Maybe he can actually meet Harry and Gwen. Because I don't know if you can have Harry in this, because I think he never knew about Norman Osborn until he met the one from Peter Two's Earth. So then that kind of raises the question, like, does he not have a Norman Osborn in this world? Does he, like, as in, if there's no Norman Osborn in this world, then there's likely no Harry Osborn in this world either. So then I don't really think that would really work out quite so well if they suddenly, if all of a sudden they introduced Harry in this, but then there was no Norman for Peter to already be familiar with, or maybe there is, but then Peter just isn't familiar with him yet. Like, maybe there is a Norman Osborn, but then Peter isn't really kind of like because this is the MCU take on Peter. Maybe he actually doesn't meet him until much later, and he doesn't meet him until years ahead of time. So maybe there's still like a normal, because then so you see, what I'm thinking now is maybe he does. Maybe there are versions of these villains in his own universe, and now going forward, if he ever actually does come face to face with them again, like, he's gonna be that much. Maybe he might be that much more well equipped to face them now that he's already faced his other variants, versions of them. Like because he's already faced Octavius, and he's already faced Electro and Sandman and Doctor and Green Goblin. Maybe coming up against his own universe as well. If his own universe does have its own versions of them, maybe now he'll actually have like an easier time coming up against them, knowing what their powers are, knowing what they can do, knowing what they're like, and actually, fighting them head on this time around might be easier, because then if they do go down that path, then fighting them might be that much easier, because then he knows who they are and what they can do and everything. So that'll be fun to see. So maybe there is a Norman Osborn and we just haven't met him yet. So then maybe once they introduce him, maybe then we can actually have like a Harry coming in too. So then we can meet Harry. Maybe we can meet Gwen, and then then maybe when he meets Gwen, he can actually get to know the Gwen that Peter 3 was in love with, and he was so obsessed with, and he can befriend her and see what she's like, and maybe like Gwen can be Gwen and everything. And hopefully this Gwen can live. Hopefully knowing that his so then. I think I wonder, maybe like now, like knowing that him knowing that Peter 3 couldn't save his Gwen, maybe he'll fight even harder to save his universe, like his own Gwen, like if he ever does have a Gwen, if he ever does get a Gwen, and if he ever does meet Gwen, then maybe he can actually maybe he can actually fight even harder to save her in the future, if the opportunity for that arises, and then he can actually kind of rest assured knowing that not only did that Peter save his MJ, but then he managed to save his own Gwen too. So he actually learned from his own various mistakes, and he actually managed to save his own Gwen. So maybe, hopefully, we can have I would say hopefully we can have a version of this where Gwen lives, but then of course Maguire's Gwen definitely did, Maguire definitely always Gwen. Maguire's Gwen fell. Maguire's Gwen definitely fell from like a 20 something story building or like a 50-something story building from like a skyscraper, but then she still lived. She fell from that building. She fell from an even greater height, from an arguably greater height than Garfield's Gwen did, and then she still survived. She's definitely still survived because Peter caught her. So Garfield's Gwen is the only one that got a bit unlucky, and got the actual canon ending for her character and everything. So there was that whole thing. So I do wonder if they would ever actually bring Gwen into Holland's universe, and like like who could play her, and how they would go about doing Gwen in that story. But I guess only time will tell. Only time will tell. So yeah, he has a new life now. He has a new life. So that's fun, isn't it? That's really fun. And I am not gonna lie, when he walked into his new apartment, there was a voice, an American voice, an American voice saying, oh, rent's due on the first of the month, don't be late, and all that kind of stuff. With with everyone we had, I feel like you know where I'm going with this. With everyone we had coming back for this movie, at least by voice, when that voice came in, at least by voice, I half expected it to be like an actual, like I don't know what Mr. Ditkovich was. I think was he Russian or Polish, or I think he was definitely European, I think he must have been like Russian, or because I think Ditkovich sounds like a fairly Russian name, so I think Ditkovich, or I think he could have been like Russian, Ukrainian, maybe Polish or something. But I think like a European. I think I was half expecting that voice, or like a voice under that same accent to be like rent due on the first of the month, don't be late, like that kind of voice actually coming in, actually reminding us of Mr. Ditkovich, like an off-screen presence actually reminding us of Mr. Ditkovich, and be like and then maybe Peter actually walking into his room saying, "Okay, thanks, Mr. Ditkovich. I'll be sure to be on time," or something. So maybe that kind of reference would have been cool. But I think maybe that could have been slightly on the nose. Maybe that could have been just like a little bit too much on the nose. Maybe like because on the one hand, he could easily have his own Mr. Ditkovich that isn't played by the same guy at all. But then on the other hand, it would be like, you know what? I mean, we've already had enough kind of nostalgia and enough kind of referencing and enough kind of fan service in this. Maybe now keep things original and keep things, just go their own way and everything. So I was half expecting it when the voice came in, but I was like, you know what? Okay, maybe it's not meant to be, so maybe that's fine. No Ditkovich this time, and no Ditkovich coming through a portal. I think, could you imagine that if they actually opened up a portal to Pete to Ted, if they open up the portal to Toby's Peter, but then he came through, and then you just saw like Mr. Ditkovich behind him, running after him, asking him after all these years, still running after him, asking him for rent, and then Peter be like, quick, close the door, close the portal, close the portal, close the portal. Like that would have been so much funnier than what we actually got. But what we got was still better and more accurate too. So yeah, but no, Mr. Ditkovich is just a random landlord, telling him the rules of the rent and stuff like that. So he does have his own apartment now, and he's still doing his thing. And he made his own suit. He made a completely new suit. He ditched the old Stark suit. Well, I mean, we don't know that he ditched it completely, but he did kind of leave it behind. And then he did make his own suit. He had like a sewing machine set up on the table and everything. And he had like his own fabric thing. And I think the new suit looks so much glossier. It looks so much glossier and so much more glow and like shiny under like the lighting and everything. So yeah, like he has like his own suit. That's kind of, it seems inspired. It definitely seems a lot more inspired by Toby and Andrew's ones with the actual color scheme and the patterning and the webbing and stuff like that. So he has his own like new suit now that he's actually stitched him. So he has like a new suit that's still kind of fabricated, but then like it's still kind of shinier and glossier, and it's still like a lot more kind of flashier. Not flashier, but still like a lot glowier. That's actually made by him, handmade by him to a sewing machine. So no $1 billion technology, no gadgets, none of that. So now those toxic assholes can shut the fuck up. But but no, like made by him, handmade by him. So now he has his own suit with the web shooters and everything. So even the web shooter stuff. So they reference the web shooter thing. They definitely reference the web shooter situation where Toby and Tom, where Andrew and Tom actually have to make their own webs, and they actually have their own web shooters. But then Toby's one actually has his own organic webs in his actual veins and everything. He actually shoots it that way. So they actually reference that too. Actually, Ned handing Peter like web cartridges to actually hold in his belt and everything. And he's like, "Oh, what's that for?" He's like, "Oh, my web shooters." Like, where's yours? And he's just like, and just like shows off his own webs and everything. So That was cool, and then even talking about it later on the scaffolding too, like Andrew being like, wow, so you just make your own web fluid in your own body, in your own arm, and in your own blood and everything. So that's so cool. So they definitely referenced it. They definitely referenced it. Like a lot of the stuff that you would want them to reference, they definitely referenced most, if not all of that stuff. They definitely kind of covered most, if not all of those bases. So in terms of that kind of stuff you mentioned and fan service being delivered. They delivered, and it was on point. So yeah, but new suit for Tom. So he did design his own suit, and he had like a final suit. I think the first time, probably the first time he's had like an actual proper final, so like an actual Spider-Man style final swing in this movie. And I think they definitely like ending it off on that note, ending it off on him still being Spider-Man, him like still having a duty to fulfill to the city as Spider-Man, as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's still doing that, so he. Went off out into the snow, out onto the rooftops, and did some flips and tricks and swings, and then he finally ended up there. So yeah, that was the final swing. So that is our new Spider-Man. That is our new Spider-Man. So yeah, and yeah, I think overall as a film, this is just again easily the best Spider-Man film we've had from this trilogy. Easily the best work that Tom Holland himself has done from this trilogy. Because I think again, a lot like so much. I think. No, Homecoming and Far From Home both incorporated so much of Tony Stark's history and Tony Stark's character and his legacy that again I think they even like in the media slander of Peter Parker in this movie, they even snuck in like an Iron Boy Jr. thing, which is what fans have been calling him since Homecoming. Like people have been calling him Iron Boy Jr. and that he's not really Spider Man because he didn't make any of his stuff himself. He has no independence. He's always constantly relying on Tony to do stuff for him and to get him his suit and do all that kind of stuff. And he's so involved with Tony that people just started calling him Iron Man Jr. So that they actually snuck in an Iron Boy Jr. meme in the actual media slander of Peter after he was exposed and everything. So that was nuts. But yeah, but with this one, it's like I think this is the first one. I think. And like to think how soon after Far From Home it carries on from two, but then from then on it's all about Peter. It's all about Peter and him trying to solve his own problems, him trying to solve his own issues. No mention of Tony whatsoever, as it should be. No reference to Tony or his technology, as it should be. You know, um, like it's just so independently and so well carried on Tom's shoulders that this is easily Tom Holland's best work as Spider-Man, easily his best work as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. Like it's just so well done. I think, especially because like people like to argue that people like to argue that Toby was the best Peter, whereas Andrew was the best Spider-Man, and like for a lot of people since Homecoming, Tom has been the best of both. But I think with No Way Home, he shines like a like a thousand different fireflies stuck together, like a thousand different kind of glow sticks. And I think he shines like never before, and he shines so strongly and so boldly and so bravely, and everything like he really fits into into the mold of Peter Parker and Spider Man like never before, and I really commend him for that. Um, like as an actor, as like a like as a person, actually fulfilling that role and actually fulfilling that legacy, and actually finally bringing the life of Peter Parker into light, and as an actor, bringing that character into light and actually bringing that portrayal into some flesh and blood and everything. So that was really cool. The music choices in this too, they brought back the Spider-Man themes. They brought back Andrew and Toby's iconic Spider-Man themes too. I think with Andrew, they brought back his music from Spider-Man 1, from the Amazing Spider-Man 1, because I feel like they would have brought in the Hans Zimmer theme from the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is iconic. But then the first one, I think James Horner also passed away. I think it was either in 21 or I think it was either in 2021 or 2020. It was either in 2020 or 2021, but I think either one of those years, I think fairly recently, James Horner actually passed away, and I think one of his final works, I think, was actually on, one of his biggest works, but also one of his final works, was actually on The Amazing Spider-Man 1, and that theme kickstarted it all, so I think that's why they actually brought that one back instead. So I think they brought back that one. I think I've listened to that one so many times. It's so good, and I recognized that right off the first few notes. Right off the first few notes, I was like, "Oh my god, they're bringing it back! They're bringing it back!" I think that theme came in when he was talking to Electro, and then when Peter sees Octavius again for the first time in years, his theme comes in from that Spider-Man movie. Just recognize it. I think I at this point I have such an ear. I have such an ear for TV show and movie themes and soundtracks and that kind of stuff. I'm just such like I listen to them so much because they're so good, and I just have such an ear for them that I get like oftentimes I can almost immediately recognize it from like the first few notes onwards from that same rhythm. So hearing hearing those tracks come in the theater. Oh, just seeing those, just hearing that music play in those scenes, hearing that music play in those scenes was just something else, just something else entirely. So they did a really great job with the music, and I think even for Tom's theme too, even for Tom's Spider-Man theme, they actually kind of did different kind of renditions, like some softer, some regular, some really orchestral and really high based and highly tuned kind of versions of it. Like they did all sorts of different renditions for it, which was really cool. So that really worked out well. So that was really cool, and the overall kind of thematic evolution throughout this trilogy too has been really fun to see. Like watching him go from um different versions of the same character in all these different movies. I think also maybe also excluding the Avengers stuff, excluding his appearances in Civil War and in the Avengers movies too, excluding those. I think his journey in his solo movies alone has been so interesting to see how he's grown from being this kind of kid who idolizes Tony Stark and the Avengers, and then going from that to becoming like a superhero for the first time in Far From Home, to becoming his own hero for the first time in Far From Home, and then No Way Home he actually learns the consequences of actually trying to do the good thing. And like No Way Home teaches him the consequences of doing anything, but also in his case, like in his particular context, actually like the consequences of actually trying to do the right thing and trying to do the good thing for people who were really kind of really kind of spectral with their morality and everything. So it really kind of shows off the consequences of actually trying to do the good thing, and it's like, like especially like Goblin's line of like, like no good deed goes unpunished. Like, you can't do good things for bad people and then expect them to cooperate entirely and cooperate willingly and everything. So like he actually learns the price of actually, especially and especially the way Jameson slanders him on the big screen, like that shot of him standing in front of that giant kind of building monitor showing Jameson's kind of news report on Spider-Man being the cause of all this destruction and everything, like that scene showcasing like the fact that like Spider-Man can do all the good he wants in the world, but then if any bad comes out of that, then he has to face that bad as the kind of definitive consequences of his actions um as a whole, and the city will slander him, and Jameson and the media will slander him and everything. So it's really I think No Way Home is pretty much the definitive conclusion for Peter as this Spider-Man, but then now going forward, he knows the value of being Spider-Man, the importance of it, the consequences of being Spider-Man, and exactly what that means for him going on from here on out and everything. So he knows that now. He knows that. So now hopefully he can have bolder and braver and more solidified journeys ahead of him. So the themes explored throughout these movies, I think for me, watching No Way Home definitely makes me appreciate Homecoming and Far From Home all the more, and that much more and everything. So definitely enjoy those movies a lot more now. So that will be that's really fun. But yeah, I think secretly, I think in like a secret slash not so secret way, I feel like this was the ideal way to put off the trilogy too. I feel like in a weird sense, in like a weird, maybe even in like a general sense, like I think if you've seen those memes of like oh, if you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't handle it. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. I feel like that kind of thing, in like a kind of general sense, is what's kind of being applied here too. Like, because I think it's like for the people who, for all the people who. For all the people who hated on Far From Home and Homecoming so relentlessly, but then they ended up loving No Way Home. It's like like for them, it's like if you can't handle Spider-Man at what you think is his worst in Homecoming and Far From Home, then you don't deserve No Way Home. Because then it's like No Way Home works so well because of how he's presented to be this kind of dependent kind of character, and how he's presented to be this kind of dependent, and to begin with to be this dependent kind of character in Homecoming, but then there's also this really naive and all too trusting hero in Far From Home too. Like Far From Home and Far From Home and Homecoming kind of show him off as this guy, as a kid who still has a lot to learn, and he's gonna make a lot of mistakes, and him being Spider-Man means that people are gonna get hurt, by those mistakes. But then like to begin with, that's who he is. To begin with, that's who he is, and I think also the Spider-Man that they're giving us in Homecoming is also one that's in the MCU. That means he's grown up with all these larger than life heroes around him. That means he's grown up, not only knowing he's grown up not only knowing about the Avengers and Iron Man and everything, but then he's also grown up kind of idolizing them. He's grown up in the same world where I think some people are still divisive in the public, but then I think overall he still managed to grow up in a world where people still idolize them and people still kind of make stories and make all these different kind of little kind of pedestals for the Avengers and everything. So he's grown up kind of idolizing them. Him being a superhero himself, it takes him a while to realize that the Avengers are not perfect. They were never perfect. They were a team of heroes trying to do the right thing, but then even they made mistakes sometimes. So now, now with No Way Home and Far From Home, it was his turn to make mistakes, and it was his turn to screw up and actually try and face the consequences of his actions. And it was finally his turn to realize the cost of being a hero and also what it really means to be a hero and to actually try and save as many people as you can. But sometimes that means, as Cap says, sometimes that means not saving everybody. But then you have to find a way to live with that, because then otherwise nobody else really gets saved. So No Way Home, I feel like not only is this like is this kind of secretly the ideal trilogy for MCU Spidey to have, but then it's also made so good. It's also so good because of that, because of the fact that No Way Home is the perfect conclusion to that trilogy, and the perfect conclusion to this kind of sect of Peter's kind of character arc that he will have among many others in the future. So yeah, so No Way Home is great. It's just so far beyond great, so far beyond great. So yeah, definitely covered everything I wrote down. Definitely covered all my written bases. Yeah, been recording for a very decent amount of time now. I've been recording for a long time now, so I think this might still end up being like a fairly long review. But either way, I think it's been a long time coming. So it will at the very least it will be at the very least it will likely be as long as it needs to be. But then I don't know if it'll be as long as I want it to be. In terms of actual stuff discussed and everything. But right now, just thinking about it, I think I've had two viewings, but then even my second viewing was actually still like a few weeks ago at least. So it's not a movie. By no means is it a movie you can forget, but it's a movie that not every single, at least for me, not every single final crisp detail will stay in my head forever. So I think I think as of recording this video, these are all the details, and these are all the details I remember, and it's also like most, if not all, of the stuff that I wanted to discuss that I remember. So all the different kind of like discussion points I remember. So. Either way, I loved it. I loved Spider-Man No Way Home with all my heart and soul. I will watch it as many more times as I want to when it comes out digital. And I think, I mean, I think I probably could make, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I definitely will do like a movie rewatch then. I'll probably consider it or something. But either way, it's just a great movie to watch. For any reason whatsoever, it's a great conclusion. It's a great movie. It's a great superhero movie in general. It's a great Spider-Man movie in general. So much of it, just so much good things about it, so many good things about it, and so much of it is good to enjoy in any fashion. So it was great. So yeah, hopefully this review was enjoyable. Hopefully you guys actually enjoyed me just talking about Spider-Man No Way Home for like 2, maybe 3 hours now. But yeah, hopefully you guys had a try. I mean, again, this was a spoiler talk review, so if you watch this review without watching the movie, hey, you only have yourself to blame. In that case, you probably only have yourself to blame. So yeah, but regardless, I really hope you guys enjoyed the movie too. If you guys did, then absolutely feel free to leave your comments down below, leave your thoughts down below. Let me know what you thought of the movie. Let me know what you enjoyed, even what you didn't enjoy, or what you didn't enjoy, or what you thought could have been done better. Anything you did enjoy, anything you loved, any theories you had that were solidified by this movie, any theories you had that were kind of sidetracked by it, any thoughts you have on No Way Home whatsoever, absolutely feel free to let me know. Anything else that I haven't mentioned, anything else I haven't mentioned in this that you want to discuss, that you want to discuss down in the comments, absolutely feel free. It'll probably even help me remember some stuff that I forgot to mention, so that would be cool too. But yeah, but for now, that is pretty much. I think is that really all I've got? I think I'm trying to remember. Like before I shut the camera off. Is there anything else I want to mention? Is there anything else I want to mention at all? I think one thing I think I've really enjoyed the friendship between Ned, Peter, and MJ. I think I mean which was I think which I feel was really only solidified through Far From Home, because I think with Homecoming he had Liz and he was interested in Liz, but then in Far From Home he was interested in MJ, and then him and then MJ became their own almighty trio, and then in No Way Home this trio is emboldened more than ever. This trio is emboldened more than ever. And I think that like the friendship that they have makes their ending all the more sad. Like him finally saying goodbye to them, but then even in the end, him going to that cafe and him not being able to actually reveal the truth. And he even had like a letter written to. Yeah, she had a letter written down that he just kind of shoved away in his pocket. And he just kind of like in the end, I think he figured, oh, you know what? If this will keep her safe from my exploits and my criminally charged life and everything, then it's better to keep her in the dark and keep her safe and away from all this and everything. So he didn't give her the letter that he wrote, actually telling her who he really was and everything, so that didn't happen. But then then her last words were, like, even if you don't tell me, I'll figure it all out. I'll figure it all out anyway, because then it's what I did last time, so I'll do it again now. So hopefully one day she can remember, and hope. I mean, I wonder if it's gonna be like a Dr. Donna situation. I really wonder if it's gonna be like a Dr. Donna situation, but just much less lethal. If it's gonna be much less lethal, because with this one, there's no threat of anyone who remembers having their heads blown up with cosmic energy or whatever. So with this one, if they remember, then it would just be like a great moment for them, like that they like I remember Peter Parker, and I remember who he is, and all that kind of stuff. So Ned and MJ, Peter and MJ, have easily been like a really great relationship to watch too. They've been a really really fun, really great, really sweet, and really kind of like a semi relatable kind of relationship. But I think their relationship has been, I think especially if you think back to yourself in their shoes, if you think back to yourself in like at their age in their shoes, I think in that case especially, like their relationship has been really relatable to watch. But I think just in general and overall, just kind of really sweet and romantic and really wholesome and heartfelt to watch. And it's just like Tom and Zendaya just absolutely nail their chemistry, and no surprise no surprise knowing that they are now together in real life too. No, really no surprise there, because I think it's happened to almost every Spider-Man actor that they've actually kind of like dated each other even briefly. So now Tom and Zendaya are also in that boat, but hopefully they last. Hopefully things go well for them, even if they don't end up together forever and everything. So hopefully things actually go well for them, and then and they do still kind of work well together. So. But Peter and MJ easily just a very very heartfelt and very very kind of warming and hopeful kind of pairing to see in this story and in these movies and everything. So they've absolutely nailed their side. Ned and Peter having one of the best friendships one of the best friendships that we've seen so far in the movies. Ned and Peter have just such a Ned and Peter have had such a closely knit friendship from the beginning in Homecoming, and they've been great friends ever since. And and their friendship has only blossomed since he found out that he was Spider-Man and everything. So that's really worked out really well in their favor. So that's been really fun to watch. But yeah, their friendship now, I think it took such a sad turn in No Way Home. So hopefully going forward into the future, we can have them reunited at some point, and having them remembering that Peter is not only one of their closest connections and one of their closest kind of human connections and everything, but also them remembering that they know Peter is Spider-Man, and that they helped him in his crusade to fight evil and to protect people and to actually save people and to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and everything. So hopefully, we can have some kind of like a reunion soon. So we'll see if it's in the cards. We'll see. But yeah, that's definitely all I've got. So that is pretty much all my current thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home covered in this review. So I'm glad I finally got to be able to do this video. So yeah, thank you guys as always so much for being here and for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed it, then feel free to leave a like and comment what your thoughts are on the movie. Anything I've missed out on, any thoughts of your own that you want to share. Absolutely feel free to leave your thoughts down below and to let me know what you thought of the movie and what you're looking forward to in any and all future Spider-Man trilogies in and outside of the MCU. Any thoughts you have, feel free to share them. Feel free to share them. And yeah, until the next time, that'll be it from me. So bye bye for now.